All right, we are live. All right, we are good. Can someone just check we've got audio? Oh, really? Okay, that's a problem. Wise. Okay. I think I know why. I think I know why. Give me a second. Oh, I know why. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, we should be good now. All right. The boys should be in the audio now.
Yeah,
What,
let
when
us
you, when
give
you
us a
guys
voice.
speak.
Free speech. Let's
Free
see.
speak.
Yo.
I think the censorship is over now.
Yeah.
Why is there such a big
Wow.
delay?
Yeah, exactly. I was also like, wait, this is quite a bit of delay.
It's a bit of a delay, isn't it?
Is it YouTube
Yeah.
delay?
Do you have it
Because I
preset
don't I
somewhere
don't
else?
have a
No?
delay.
Oh,
At least
okay.
I
But
don't.
now my voice is way louder than yours, Ricky.
Oh, is it way louder? Okay. Let me turn myself up. How much louder are we talking?
Like
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I think your mic's
like
just
two
good.
times
2 times?
for
Oh
me.
shit. Okay, I'm gonna give myself a
Okay, not 2
5.
times, like 1.5x
Yeah,
times.
I think it's just
1.5x. Let me turn
Yeah,
the
you
focus
were
down then.
I, I
no,
was
I think
yeah.
it's just your mic. I think honestly I think it's just your mic. Because Ricky's
Mine?
got a good mic as well, but it's your voice maybe as well, the way you talk. I don't know, whatever. You can change it, Rick.
Is RDZ loud?
Uh okay, now it was fine for you and me.
Is it better? I think
Yeah,
it should be good now. I've put
yeah,
myself
now
5.
it's fine.
All right, cool. All right,
Yeah, it's
sorry for
good.
the delay, guys. For those of you watching on the rebroadcast. All right, RDZ, you want to take it away?
All right, let's do it. Gonna do a presentation or just like a discussion really on Gods Unchained. Daniel, if you can let me share my screen, I'll show you guys a bit of a PowerPoint, and then we can go through maybe even some gameplay. I've actually spent today playing both of these games. I actually played it for quite a long time, both of them for a few hours. So
Wait,
I
what both of
wasted.
them?
Oh, sorry. I played Gods Unchained for a few hours, and I also played Hearthstone. So to give you
Oh,
guys a bit of context behind Gods Unchained, it's basically a carbon copy of Hearthstone, right? And they've made it into a Web3 Hearthstone. And in fact, in their white paper, in the Immutable white paper, who are the guys that designed Gods Unchained, they make specific reference to the fact that Hearthstone is where they want to be. Hearthstone is the game they want to be like. So that's why I wanted to play both. And I actually had one on one monitor and the other on the other monitor for a direct comparison. It was a bit hard playing two games at once, but I think it was a good way to directly compare the game. So all right, let's get into it.
yeah.
Right, so Gods Unchained. Gods Unchained, as I am showing you guys here, it's the Web3 Hearthstone. So this is a game that, um, as I said, they're targeting towards Hearthstone players, and they really want Hearthstone to be the target. That's where they want to be. So what is Gods Unchained? It's an online card game, as I said. The Web3 crypto component of it is F5. Like this. Is this fine?
Yeah.
I don't know why it doesn't do full screen like this. This is just in this format for some reason.
I mean, it's fine for me.
Is it full screen for you guys?
I can
Okay,
definitely
anyway.
see what's on the screen, so I don't mind. But it's like
I know,
notes and
I know,
stuff.
I know why it's giving me, for some reason, it's giving me the wrong screen. Hold on. Let me share. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the interruption. I'll just share my other screen. New share.
Okay.
And then here we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Yep.
We're in the
Okay,
mix.
so guys, all right, let's get into it. So Web3 Hearthstone, that's where our starting point is for everyone watching. It's the Web3 Hearthstone. So online card game, it's on Ethereum's layer 2 blockchain called Immutable X. So Immutable X, as a quick background, is a layer 2 blockchain that is built on top of Ethereum. The reason why they've done that is to reduce transaction costs, because because games require a lot of transactions, numerous transactions to run a game and for players to actually play the game. And if you're using Ethereum, it's very, very expensive for the average player to play. So they've created layer 2s on top of ETH to sort of mitigate that cost. What does the game involve? It's basically the players collecting cards, building decks, and battling each other in online play. Similar play style and presentation to Hearthstone, of course. I actually need my notes.
Yeah. Oh, actually,
am I going to do this?
just yeah, sec. Ricky, did you? Okay, okay. I just saw it's like, is this the new Hearthstone? Is like the title? Can you put like some Gods Unchained in there or something afterwards?
Yeah, done.
Yeah, like Gods Unchained review, so people
Yep.
know.
Guys, I'm actually just going to do it like this. Sorry, because the full screen is blocking out my notes. I just want to give you guys a bit more info. So I'm just going to give it to you, the presentation like this. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So as I said, it's a similar play style and presentation to Hearthstone. The aim of the game is to build the best deck and battle players. So that's it. That's what this game is about. And yeah, cards are found in decks. Cards found in those decks that you need are what adds the NFT features to the game, right? So if you can think about how NFTs work, imagine one card is one NFT, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you've got an integration between blockchain and gaming in this case. They're tradable on the Immutable X marketplace called Token Trove, which is, as I said, on that layer 2 immutable blockchain. And yeah, the NFT makes each card unique, and this creates a new approach to in-game collectibles and digital collectibles, which we are all pretty bullish on. But of course, we don't know how that's gonna actually happen in the future. To give a quick background also on Immutable, it's an Australian Web3 company, has 280 employees, and a little bit of context into their Gods Unchained component. It was initially, Gods Unchained was initially made by one of the developers of Magic the Gathering Online. In July 2022, they fired 24 employees, which most of them were from the Gods Unchained team, and who were Gods Unchained core developers. So that was a little bit of a worrying sign. Since then, they've released a few expansions. They've got 6 expansions in total for Gods Unchained. And to give a bit of a comparison to Hearthstone, Hearthstone has 21. In saying that, Gods has released quite a few sets recently in the last year. Hearthstone's released 4, Gods has released 3. So it's pretty good. If we're looking at comparing both of those games, it's pretty neck and neck in terms of.
I would just make a note there though. They're not full expansions by Gods. So Winter Wonderlands, I think, only had like 12 or 14 cards, and Band of the Wolf I mean, Band of the Wolf is a big expansion, which just came out recently. I think they had 38 new cards. So, and my understanding is Hearthstone's expansions are a lot larger, but mind you, they probably also have a lot more money and they also have a larger team. And just quickly, one other thing you probably should explain. Earlier, you said obviously these games, like crypto games, require a lot of transactions. Can you just go into more, like, why do crypto gaming, like, why is it important that first of all Immutable is a layer 2 and has gasless transactions, and like why would I need to do a lot of transactions in a game like this?
So the easiest example really is to look at building a deck, right? So in order to play the game, you need to build a deck. Let's say there's 20 new cards out of the 30 cards in my deck, which I need to obtain somehow. I don't have those cards collected. I haven't opened them up in packs, or I've earned them throughout the game. So I need to go onto the marketplace and actually obtain those cards, purchase those cards. That requires a minimum of 20 transactions to do so, right? A minimum. In some cases, it might even be 25 or 30 if you were to place bids and not just buy those cards outright. So if you think about Ethereum and the way their gas system works, you have to pay a fee for each transaction, and a fee ranges between, $1 to $2 all the way up to $5-6 per transaction. So you can see how significant that could be if you're making 20 transactions, and it's only just to make one deck, right? And it's quite a distraction for players, or it detracts from their experience if they have to pay significant amounts of money just to make a simple deck. And they're probably just not going to do it, right? And that's why you have solutions like Immutable, who say, okay, we know we need 20-30 transactions here, maybe even per day or per week for these players. Let's make it so cheap that it's negligible. So on Immutable, I believe a transaction is a couple of cents, right? And on other layer 2s as well, like Arbitrum and Polygon, it's also under 10 cents. So it's very, very...
Immutable's gasless. It's free.
Oh, gasless. There you go. So Immutable you'd need a I guess initially pay a gas fee to put it on Immutable, and then from there it's gasless. So even better, right? Even better than what I thought. I thought it was like tiny, but yeah, zero gas is insane. So also I had a look, and in terms of the amount of cards that Hearthstone releases per expansion, it's significant, right? They have over 100 cards. In some cases, 150 cards that they have. So they're quite comprehensive with their expansions. But then again, credit to the Gods Unchained team to release a decent amount of expansions and keep the player base, entertained. The next part, I'll go through a bit of the contents. So that was more of an introduction into what it is and how the game works. Now I'm going to go through a bit of this structure here. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is because this is what we do for all of our reviews at Gameonomics. We go through game quality, tokenomics, adoption and user engagement, value proposition, and then we conclude, right? In fact, usually there's an added one in there, game developers or game teams. But in this case, I didn't go into the team, right? I actually skipped that component. So the game quality. As I said, we're comparing this directly with Hearthstone because it's basically a carbon copy in terms of its gameplay, right? There are 3 game modes found in the game: solo, ranked, and direct challenge, which is just a private match between like 2 friends. Right. Ranked also includes a unique weekend ranked leaderboard, which is actually something different to Hearthstone. It gives users additional rewards on the weekend based on performance over the previous week and on the weekend battles. So let's say you achieve top rankings with during the week, you will secure a prize at the end of that week. And if you perform well in the weekend battles, on top of that, you will receive additional prizes. So that's quite a nice way to encourage people to come and to enjoy the game on weekends, but also make sure that they have high rankings. It rewards high ranking players. In terms of the game client, so before accessing the actual game itself, it is quite hard to navigate, in my opinion, right? It's okay. It does what it needs to do, but it's nothing special. There are your basic card game features like build the collection decks, play online to test your deck, your information, your guide sections. But compared to Hearthstone, the game client feels basic and hard to navigate, as I said, especially if you're a new player, right? You go in there, you don't really know where you're going. You open up your decks and you open up your collection, and it's just a little bit confusing.
So it's not for noobs.
Well, look, I would say that you can manage it, all right? Like a lot of card games are not easy in the first place. So I think they're a bit harder to start than, let's say, like a shooter or a COD. But once again, I'm just comparing this directly to how smooth Hearthstone is and how easy it is to construct decks, and also to see your cards. So another one of my complaints in terms of the ease of access of some of the deck building is you can't really see. You can click on cards, but it doesn't even give you a link to go.
You able to like give us a demonstration? Why don't you pull up the client?
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, good idea. This is the client over here, right? So you can see you've got your play modes on the left. This is just casual 1v1, weekend ranked, which is what we're under. It says 1 hour and 41 minutes here, right? That we've got of that. And then you've got the solo mode against PC, against an AI, and then you've got direct challenge and tutorial, right? Now, when you go, what I'm talking about is more not this play side. I actually think the play button and the play interface is quite good. It's more to do with these tabs at the top, right? So what I was referring to in my example was when you click the collections here, right? So you've got these cards. I click that, and then it gives me a full comprehensive look into each one of these cards. And for me, it's a bit overwhelming when I click directly into this and I just go straight into a bunch of cards, and a bunch of cards that I have, but a bunch of cards that I don't have as well on here. And then let's say I don't have...
So are these your cards or just like all the cards?
So these are my cards, the ones that are not grayed out. And then if I go to the bottom, these are my cards that I don't have. These are the ones that are grayed out, if you can see the color scheme.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, let's say I'm a new player and I'm like, oh, I actually need, this looks like it's a really good card for my deck, Curious Wisp. How do I get it? I don't know. So do I click? Like when I click, I would prefer if it would give me an interface into, okay, this is how you can potentially craft it, or this is the pack that you have to go get, or
like a link to the marketplace or something.
Yeah, or a link to the marketplace. And they do have a link to the marketplace. It's up here, right? Market. So you can buy and sell.
But you want to like have it like from here, which I think it makes sense.
Correct. I would prefer just little things like that. I'm just
like,
maybe
hey,
being
I'm
a little
missing
bit
this
picky.
card. Like, how can I even get it? But here you don't have that.
Yeah. I'm being a little bit picky, but given how complicated blockchain already is and the crypto space already is, we need to make these things very, very easy, like almost idiot proof to do. But yeah, as I said, these are I'm likely being quite picky about this. It's still quite a nice interface. What I'm not being picky about is if I move forward into the other tabs, right? So workshop is this is another thing. You kind of have to exit each interface. It doesn't exit it for you. It's a little bit glitchy. So I have to go all the way back over here, I think, and then okay, this is the workshop. This is the deck creation. So you can see all of the decks that I currently have, and then all of the custom decks that I haven't built yet. The one that I have complaints about is generally speaking, the last two tabs, right? So learn, cards, FAQ, lore, guide. These all take you to separate links of websites. It's a little bit, there's nothing wrong with it. It does its job. But even if I go to FAQ, for example, it's like I have to click a bunch of things and I have to go in here and then click another link and another link. And you know, it's something that once again I think can be done better, right? It's I'm being picky. I'm being a little bit like,
Yeah, this doesn't seem like a huge issue.
it's not a
This
huge issue.
specific one, yeah.
But as I said, when I'm thinking how I approached this game was with the mindset of a Hearthstone player. And for me, Hearthstone makes it so easy to do these things, and it's so easy for you to access a lot of the facilities within the game
Yeah.
that this.
So
all
you
of
would
this
want
stuff-
those links to open here in the client, which I think it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And
Okay.
you know what? I will get to later. Like obviously, you know, this is still a relatively newish game. It's still in development. But I'll get to some of my criticisms on that a bit later. But yeah, this
But
is the
does
interface.
Hearthstone actually have these things though? I don't think, from my memory, they don't have like learn and stuff like that.
I'm not sure if they do, but they definitely have pretty good. Let's see. Let's
Yeah, I
bring
mean,
up
I think
Hearthstone.
the
They definitely
Hearthstone
have
user
quite
interface is
good-
definitely better, but I don't think it's,
Yes.
I don't remember them having any sort of learning stuff. I think their overall UI is way better. I mean, like you said, that the coming out of collection into workshop and having to click the cross is really annoying. I've done that many times. In terms of the complexity of the collection and the cards, I mean, you got to remember with trading card games, it's a very niche market. Generally, it's people who are willing to get into a very, very complicated game. You know, trading card games are not easy, particularly because of the deck building element of it. And generally, with most trading card games online, you have to access external sources, so it's not necessarily a new concept in the industry. And fortunately for Gods Unchained, you have a site called GU Decks, which is basically your accompaniment site. Just like Hearthstone has, oh god, it's been a very long time since I played Hearthstone, but there was a couple of sites, and you can get add-ons and stuff like that to help you create decks. So trading card games are pretty difficult, and generally it comes down to communities add-on features. So I don't know how critical we can be specifically with that sort of stuff in terms of the strategy side of things, because yeah, I can't think of any trading card game online anyway that has extensive resources built into the client to help new players.
And that's fair enough. And I definitely agree with you on the fact that these games are generally require you to go to external sources. So I do agree. I just think that as I said, the whole bunch of links exiting from a client and all that sort of stuff, it can get a bit annoying, especially with FAQs and yeah. But
yeah,
once again,
for me
the
the main thing here is like the collections part. Like maybe I would want
Yep.
to see like an easier way to like, okay, I don't have this card, I want it, so like I want to have like more like streamlined way to just get the cards I don't have.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I think
exactly.
I think one thing I would say, can you just go back to the collections? My complaint would be the filtering system could be a little bit better. For example, when I want to just look for Band of the Wolf cards, I think there's only really, you have to group by set, which is the X, I believe. Yep. And then it's just like a drop down menu of, all right, this is the set, rather than having it all in one go would be nice. I mean, I guess they have the filters on the top left, GE, CO, ET, they all represent different sets, but I don't know, drop down menu would be a little bit nicer. But once again, we're being very picky here.
I agree. I agree. But these small things really do affect a user's experience. They really do. Like when as a noob player, when you first go onto these things and you're overwhelmed by firstly the number of cards that's in your face, and then you don't know, you can't really go into, there's no real like recommendations. I'm not even sure. Let's have a look at if they
That's
have
a fair point. I think like what you
pack.
bring up here is that like it's this kind of game, it's kind of hard to get into like from someone who hasn't played card games before, right? I think there is like a kind of like an intimidating factor, like barrier to entry, where you probably okay, let's say like it really helps to have like previous card game experience.
For sure.
If you drop in.
The good thing about
Because
Gods though is they have they do have starter decks that you can automatically Like you don't have to build a deck.
Yeah.
Each god has its own starter deck, which generally plays okay. But yeah, it's definitely overwhelming if you don't play trading card
I think
games.
it's more about the genre. I think it's like a genre thing. It's just like it's a bit harder to get the hang of than just like a shooter, like you said, like a shooter or something. I'm saying this from the perspective who is that guy. Like I never played card games before, and I did play Gods Unchained a while back. So yeah, I do. Yeah, and I do remember it was like a bit like, okay, like what's going on here? Like how does this all work? It took me a bit to understand what's going on.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right, Ricky. It requires a little bit of knowledge, and yeah, you're right too, Daniel, with that as well. I think these are not easy games to get into in the first place.
Yeah.
And
But it's like the genre, not the game.
yeah, it's the genre, not the game. Yep. And speaking of the game, when you actually get into the game mode and when you go to the play game modes, it's actually quite good. You see your initial thing is to swap out your hand, and then choose your hero power first. Actually, you swap out your hand. If you want to swap out a few of your cards at the start, called mulliganing, and all of that's very smooth. All of them that's very similar to Hearthstone. The artwork on these cards is absolutely fantastic. I think it actually competes with some of the artwork on Hearthstone. Maybe not so much some of the animations once you play a card, but definitely the artwork is great on these cards.
Really?
They fit in very well with the hero themes.
So, I mean, for what it's worth, I love this game. So, but I would say the art quality is actually not that good compared to other card games. I mean, art in card games is very important, and it's definitely good, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. I think the art quality, I've seen a lot of other shittier Web3 card games with better art quality, personally, in my opinion. Obviously, these are subjective. Like I even saw a Reddit thread the other day on Gods where someone was like, wait, the beta graphics and the graphics of the board in the beta version was better than the full release, which I thought was pretty funny. So, but that being said, mechanically, I think I like the theme of the game with the gods. I know it's cringe a little bit when they do all the like, it's mortals, it's your time, but at least like the theme is consistent. And for those of you who are into, ancient history, there's definitely a lot of like historical stuff that gets related to it. So in terms of thematically, Gods does really well because it's very unique. In fact, I can't think of any real card games off the top of my head anyway that are historically related to fantasy. We have basically, like for example, the Hoplite Initiate, that's direct reference to the ancient Greek civilization. You also have references to Egyptians and stuff like that. So thematically it's cool, but I think the art could be better. I think the graphic in the square itself is not bad. I think it's more so the card itself, like the gray around it just feels a little bit, I don't know, feels a bit dull in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I was more referring to. I was more referring to the actual inside the card. I do agree with you actually. The outside of the artwork, I guess you can call it the painting. The outside of the painting is kind of shitty, but I personally think the inside of the painting is quite good. The animation's actually not so good, so I think there's a lot of work to be done there, because a large part of Hearthstone, which is quite nice, it feels nice to do, is playing your card, seeing your animation, and you're like, oh, that was cool, or that legendary did a fucking sick little call out or a speech or something. And I think that component of the game is really quite entertaining. So forget the game mechanics itself. It's that entertaining art style and artwork that and audio actually that is quite good. And speaking of audio, Gods Unchained also has very good audio in my opinion. I think I like the audio, the music, the interactions, the sort of the ambience that the audio creates is quite good.
Okay.
But there are some visual issues that I can notice when playing the game. So they're a little bit minor, and once again, they don't really. Maybe I'm being a little bit picky, but and it doesn't really contribute that much to the overall experience, but it's small things. So for example, when you play certain cards and you have to target that card's ability onto something, it's not smooth, and it can sometimes be a bit clunky, and it can sometimes even be a bit laggy, like a glitchy. That's something that can happen in Hearthstone as well, but it's very rare. And generally speaking, those sort of mechanics in Hearthstone are very, very clean. One of the cleanest games out there. What else? Let's go back to the presentation. So what else? In terms of game modes, I think Gods is also a little bit limited. So you've only got the 1v1 play modes in Gods, compared to Hearthstone, which has many, many game modes. It's got solo, it's got challenge modes, it's got completely separate game modes than the actual card deck building modes as well. You've also got like tournaments and competitions too. I think a big one for me, especially playing today, was when I played Hearthstone, I had access to quests, and I had access to weekly quests, daily quests, challenges, and it was so fun because I came on and I was like, oh shit, I've got so much here to do. Whereas with Gods, I came on and to be fair, with Gods, I had the weekend challenge still available. I got lucky with that playing today, but that was it. And really, there wasn't much else for me to look forward to, right? And I know Gods have their daily fragment stuff, which I'll get into later. So where you can earn a number of fragments and then you earn Gods tokens. And anyway, it's fucking basically like a university assignment. So I will get into that next.
So you don't think they had like enough of an element to keep you in there playing more games, more incentives for you to just, whereas Hearthstone did have that for you?
If we're comparing Hearthstone and Gods Unchained, it's not even a competition when it comes to game modes. It's not even close. I do believe that Gods Unchained has that ranked weekend stuff that is unique, right? I think that's quite cool, like battling it out on a weekend and you've only got a certain amount of time to get a certain amount of wins. And actually you can't even spam play it either. It's not like you can sit there and grind 100 games. It's only within a certain window, which I think is quite cool, right? And encourages like casual players to get into the game. But in terms of quests, in terms of challenges, in terms of earning rewards over time and over the course of maybe daily quests and weekly quests and monthly challenges, that's something that I am starting to see in a lot of games, and I'm starting to see in older games starting to bring that as well into their game modes, because players love that. They love that idea of not only getting rewards for doing so, but it's also a feeling of accomplishment. It's an external feeling of accomplishment that happens, and it's really important for players to keep coming back to the game, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, these are games that, you know, it's the same thing. You match up 1v1 against the player, you have to create a deck. It's just a matter of which deck is separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go into like at some point. Okay, yeah, or if you want to address that first, Ricky, but yeah, I want to go at some point in the discussion with like just more straightforward comparing Hearthstone with this. But I don't know, like if you guys want to do it now, I will have some questions. But yeah, if you have something to say first, Ricky, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask Ricky what his thoughts were on this as well in terms of the game modes, because Ricky loves Gods Unchained and he's also played Hearthstone in the past.
He's our professional card game player.
Yeah, he's a card game.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a card game weeboo. So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think Hearthstone definitely has more game modes. I mean, they have the arena. The arena itself, like some people just play arena. And for those of you who don't know arena, basically you go into a game, you have a bunch of random cards that you get to pick every round. You need to fill your deck with 30 cards, and that itself is fun. And then once you've built your deck, you then challenge that against other players in the arena. And then it's like a survival mode. So if you lose 3 games, you're out. You get some rewards based on you know, how many wins you get. I think the max wins is 12 wins. If you get 12 wins, you get like the top prize. And obviously that's ELO dependent. So, you know, you always get matched up against people who are on the same win. So if someone's on 6 wins, you match up against someone else who has 6 wins. In terms of the quests, I also agree. The questing, if we once again directly compare it to Hearthstone, Hearthstone always had those daily quests where you would have to do some sort of cool objective in the game. So, for example, it'd be like cast 40 spells or kill 60 minions, and now those things don't really change the competitive level between players too much. But if you're a casual player, it's fun because it encourages you to try different decks. It encourages you to try different strategies. So that element is quite good. The only equivalent for that is in Gods is playing different classes, I believe, if they still have that. I'm not too sure. So basically you need to play like 3 games with a light deck, 3 games with a nature deck. 3 wins, I think it is. And that's their, what do you call it? It's their equivalent to the questing. Now, for Gods can easily implement that. Like it's not a difficult thing to implement. I mean, I could literally sit here and make quests up off the top of my head. Like I could be like, use 100, use like 100 of your favor or something like that in the day or something like that. So like that addition is very easy to implement. So I don't think it's that innovative what Hearthstone has done. I don't think it's that crazy. I'm not going to go out there and be like, for what it's worth, I'm a massive hater of Hearthstone. So I'm going to be pretty biased in my analysis. But yeah, basically, I don't think it's that innovative. And yeah, something like a battle pass type thing for Gods would be pretty cool. And, you know, I know battle passes have mixed reception in the gaming community because obviously it's a money grab. But at the same time, battle passes create storylines, they create quests, they create challenges, and that's what gives you more content. So Look, I know people don't like the whole money grab stuff, but I think battle passes do increase people's playing experience. So as a result, I'm happy to pay more money to increase my playing experience. I mean, it's as simple as that. So yeah, I totally agree with RDZ. I can't. Yeah, I mean, Hearthstone definitely in terms of variety definitely does do a lot better than Gods.
Okay.
And so Daniel, you wanted to go through a direct comparison in terms of game quality and game play. Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I was basically curious because both of you guys have played both, right? Hearthstone and Gods Unchained.
Yep.
And so yeah, I'm curious, like, so first of all, since it wants to be like a Hearthstone, a new Hearthstone, I'm curious, like, why would Hearthstone like players play this one, play Gods Unchained and not Hearthstone, if there is such a reason at this point, or it's too early? And yeah, like kind of like a comparison, like how many, let's say if you take a Hearthstone player, how likely is it that like he's like, oh yeah, actually I like this quite a bit, and just incorporate it into his card game, nerding it out with stuff.
Do we want to do this maybe at the end of the slides? Because I feel like some of our discussion might be influenced by slides. And you might get
like further
idea
info
by the slides as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, let's do that at the end.
We can do then, like we can at this point, or like we can still all do it all at the end, but at this point we could cover it's like the strictly gameplay. What you guys think, because we are at the gameplay section. What you guys think, like strictly gameplay, Hearthstone versus this current version of Gods Unchained. If a Hearthstone player would really enjoy this, or they like, it's a bit boring, or
let me go first, Ricky, because I think you're gonna provide some better points than I am, because in my opinion, the reason why I say this is because in my opinion there is no competition here. Unfortunately for Gods Unchained, they are basically making an identical game. Now there are some differences in gameplay. There's some slight differences with in terms of you get to choose your hero power at the start of the game. I know that might not mean mean a whole lot to people that don't know anything about card games, but you get to choose your hero power at the start of the game. In Hearthstone, you have your set hero power, right, based on your hero. In Gods Unchained, you actually get to choose, right? Each scenario is different. It just adds a little bit more of a adaptability to the matchup, right?
Yeah.
And then the second part of it, there's also something called a sanctum, which is like in Gods Unchained, there's also something called a sanctum, which is like a selection of 3 cards that both players can see on the right hand side of the I don't know if you guys can see it here in the picture, but it's the right hand side. There's 3 cards here that both players can see, and both players can obtain at some point in the match once they've achieved a certain amount of favor points. Now, favor points are achieved by attacking the opponent throughout the game, right? So you earn that over the course of the game, and the first player to take the first card will get that card, right? But you've got 3 to select from. So it adds a little bit of, once again, adaptability and matchup. It changes the matchup dynamic slightly. Other than that, it's almost an identical game. Obviously, heroes are different, cards are different, but in terms of what the cards do, even some of the card abilities, there's some slight differences to, armor means something different in Hearthstone than it does in this game. Some of the names are slightly different, like Twin Strike is that you can attack twice on Gods Unchained. On Hearthstone, I believe it's called Twin Strike as well. Ricky, I can't remember what it is, but they're just slightly different names.
Yeah.
For me,
they all basically have different names. There's just a few different things.
Yeah.
But I will go into that in a second.
Yeah, you go into it because I know you're gonna give a more comprehensive answer than that. But for me, when I play these 2 games and when I play it today, I get basically the same experience. It's just that Hearthstone is a little bit more polished, right? And this is just purely in terms of the play mode and the gameplay. Obviously, there are other components of Gods Unchained which add to its experience, which are completely non-game related, like the collectability side, the NFT side, the token side, that sort of thing. But yeah, Ricky, you go ahead because, as I said, you're going to give a more comprehensive answer to this for sure.
Well, to answer, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think people should move from Hearthstone to Gods Unchained, and I'll try and stay on topic.
Wait, should or shouldn't?
Should. I think there's a multitude of reasons, but I'll try and stick to the gameplay ones for now, and then I'll go into the collectability ones when we do go to NFTs and tokenomics or whatever. But the first thing is, to answer your question, one's playing bingo and one's actually playing a card game. And unfortunately, Hearthstone have turned their game into a basically like brain dead RNG. They've just moved so far away from the card game. To me, it's quite tilting. It's the big reason I quit Hearthstone. They kept bringing in too many mechanics, particularly these discover mechanics. So basically what happens is you play a card and then you discover a card, and these cards just come out of nowhere. And it basically takes away the whole strategic element of card games to the point where I can't tell the difference between playing Hearthstone and playing the pokies. For those of you who don't know what pokies are, it's a poker machine. Because it is that ridiculous. Look, at the end of the day, all card games have RNG variants. That's what makes the game fun. But I think the Hearthstone developers went a little bit too crazy, and I can see why perhaps more beginner players would like playing Hearthstone, because it is exciting to just draw these like random cards out of the blue. But when you're playing competitive, it doesn't really, it takes away the whole like science of deduction, right? Daniel and I play poker, and one of the best parts of about playing poker is like, understanding what your opponent has, what you can do to counter that, how to manipulate, the bet size to make sure you get this part of their strategy, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go into too much detail in that. But Hearthstone basically removed that by having all these discover, and the mechanics they kept bringing in were ridiculous. Now, I don't fault them, because when you do bring in a new expansion in, you kind of need to bring a new mechanic, and there's only so many mechanics that you can bring in until it gets too ridiculous. So I understand the power. It's basically what's called like a power creep. So generally speaking, every new set of expansion cards are going to be better than the previous because they add a new mechanic and they need to make this mechanic some sort of fun. And obviously you're going to target the newer players coming into the game as opposed to maintaining the regulars. So my problem with Hearthstone is, it's just not even a card game anymore. The thing I like about Gods is there's a lot more strategy. There are some things that Hearthstone does a little bit better. For example, Gods, I feel like, is played very much in early game. You don't really get to late game too often unless you play against, say, like a warrior, even like maybe. I mean, there's some really expensive decks that you can play late game, but once again, they're expensive, so there's a bit of a barrier entry there. I guess that's a negative for Gods. And generally, a lot of your decks will play in the early to mid game, and as a result, the games finish quicker. The one thing that I do like about Gods is the whole Sanctum. I think that adds a level of strategy of denial. So, that's open information. Both players know what's available on the side card. So there's some interesting strategies that come up with, let's say the 3 cards in the Sanctum, you don't need any of those cards, but your opponent needs to get them. You can actually spend your favor to get those cards to deny your opponent. And that's something Hearthstone doesn't have, because in Hearthstone, there's no such thing as denying anymore. It's literally like, hey, play a card, discover a card. Oh, I don't know what you discover, or I don't know what you can discover. You're just going to randomly get a card in your hand, and there's like no counterplay. That being said, you can download like these for like the really, really nerd players. You can download these add-ons that, predict the probability of what card they've discovered. But that, once again, that's just like taking the fun out of the game, and like it's just making it so ridiculous now that if you don't have these add-ons, you can't compete at the highest level. Gods doesn't really have that issue. So from a more competitive side, and I played both of them quite competitively, I think Gods performs a lot better. In terms of late game play and comboing, I think Hearthstone feels a little bit more rewarding in that sense. There's way more cooler like one turn combo kill decks that are available with Hearthstone versus Gods Unchained. So if you're into like the whole like wait combo, I think Hearthstone's better for that. But I mean, mind you, there are some decks like that in Gods. There's a couple of mage decks that I could think of that do that. But generally speaking, from a competitive level, I think Gods shits on Hearthstone, to be completely honest. I think Hearthstone's better if you just like want to play casual and don't really care about competitive. So once again, Blizzard has probably done a good job there, because at the end of the day for them, they want to make the most money, target the mainstream audience, which is going to be recreationals, and you just print from that. So that's a very big reason why I think Hearthstone players will move over to Gods. Now, one thing I would say with Gods that they don't do too well, at least when I used to play competitively a lot, is that the meta was very stale, and there were a few deck archetypes that would always win, and if you weren't playing those deck archetypes, you were basically just binned. Now I haven't played competitively in the last 2-3 months, so I don't know if they fixed those meta issues, but I think Hearthstone was a little bit better in terms of managing the meta and nerfing cards and stuff like that. So I would say that's the downfall for Gods. But once again, they have a smaller team, blah blah blah, so a lot harder for them to manage that sort of stuff there. But if they get a bigger team and they get more funding, I would assume that Gods would be a lot better game than Hearthstone.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point with the meta, because I agree. I agree that the meta in terms of Gods Unchained can be a little bit one-dimensional. I think the main reason for that, and I'll, as I said, I'll get into it later in the presentation, is that there's a hard that they can't actually nerf cards. There's a what is the word for it? There's a word for it that they use. The cards are locked, right? So there's big balance issues that happen because of the cards are locked, and what that means is that I don't believe they can be they can be changed. Although there has been a few nerfs, hasn't there, Ricky?
No, they can definitely change the cards. They've nerfed and buffed heaps of
Mhm.
cards in the past.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that point, maybe, I don't know, that source that I got, maybe it was wrong about that point. But yeah, in general, it's one-dimensional, I think, as well. I think that your point about it being a lot of RNG in Hearthstone is true. But I think that's also what makes it fun, especially for casual players.
See?
In saying that, I do think that it has gone quite far in Hearthstone as well. I think they've gone a bit fucking crazy with it, and to the point where it's a little bit annoying if you're a really, if you're a competitive but also organized player. But in saying that, who are we appealing here? If we're appealing to the mainstream, then I think that side of, being able to jump on, play a few games, discover a few random cards that you don't have or you don't have access to, could be a pretty cool thing to do in terms of Hearthstone. I'm going to continue to play it because I'm addicted. So I'm going to continue to play it probably for the next few days, and I'll let you guys know how I go with Hearthstone. I will also play a little bit of Gods as well. But yeah, for me as a former Hearthstone player, maybe it's nostalgia as well. I'm straight away drawn to go back and play after playing for a few hours today. Gods Unchained, not so much. I'm not keen to play it. I've got so many challenges to do on Hearthstone. There's new expansion, there's new packs that I can open with the money that I get from Quest. It's like a simple pathway for me when it comes to Hearthstone. I can jump on, I can simply go and do that journey or do that path that I need to do. And I know exactly with the direction that it's going to. It's not so clear for me in Gods Unchained.
Yeah. I just want to make one
the skill part.
Yeah, sorry, go. No, you
yeah.
go, Daniel. You go.
I think the skill part you talked about, Ricky, is definitely an interesting discussion there because I think like it's very nice how you and Rodan are basically different target audiences. You're definitely the more skilled player. You're more like in there for the strategy, more like for the the advanced stuff, nerding it out, being able to really use your study, think about strategies, and use your brain a lot. But but then at the same time, it's, on the other hand, it seems like Hearthstone went the other way. I see this a lot, and I think we do see this a lot in a lot of games that they turn down the skill component in order to be basically available to more players and accessible to more players, and especially newcomers, because if a newcomer comes in, it gets destroyed the first 10 games or whatever, and they're trying to play ranked or whatever, then it's not fun for them. So I want to ask, which do you think is a better model? Because I could see how, from your perspective, Ricky, from you, it's definitely Gods Unchained is better, but you have to acknowledge it does address a smaller subset of the overall card game players population, whereas it seems like Hearthstone tried to go the other way, okay, we want to make money, let's just bring on as many people as we can and add a lot of luck to it, a lot of RNG to it, so everyone has a more fair chance. But it becomes more brain dead. Which would you invest in?
Well, okay, so there's a few points there. I think the first thing is I'm not saying that Hearthstone isn't as skilled. The skill element is very different. It's about managing the randomness, which I personally don't think is that fun in a card game. The whole point of a card game, and I'm going to break this down very fundamentally, a trading card game, right, is, well, for these types of card games, it's a deck builder. So when you build a deck, I don't expect to see many other cards outside of that deck when I'm playing against it or when I'm playing my deck. When you start bringing out these bullshit mechanic cards like Discover, where you can just start pulling random cards out of fucking an expansion from 7 seasons ago, that's not fun, because I'm not, as a competitive player, I'm not ready for that. And now some people could be like, well, if you're a good player, you should be able to adapt to that. But it's just not fun when I come up against a deck and I'm like, okay, cool, I know that I need to play around these cards. I know I need to counter this. I need to wait for them to play this because there's only 2 of those in their deck. Like, that's so much better strategically than like some bullshit card that just gets pulled out of nowhere, out of some ass. And you're like, what the fuck? And I lose the game from that. That's like the least rewarding way to win, and it's the most tilting way to lose. So from like, it's just such a dumb concept in my opinion. It's a deck building game. Cards that were built in the deck, there's, you know, a lot of the skill comes from building the deck as well. Like, a lot of people are known, particularly back in Hearthstone, there was a lot of, like, I'm going to go some really old school names here. Like Kalento was someone that I'd love building. I loved watching him build decks because he was so innovative. He came up with these insane combinations. But then Hearthstone's like, well, it doesn't matter about combos. Just put this fucking OP card down and you just get to pick any OP card. And it's like, that's not fun. Like, you may as well just go play like a different genre at that point.
Yeah.
So that's
like
my
the
big
competitive
gripe.
element has to suffer a lot in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and obviously there's still skill in the game. Like, I would argue it's as skillful as Gods. It's just a different type of skill. It's about like, and it's also kind of lame though, because now you need to actually download these add-ons that like calculate the probability of this Discover card coming up. And then it's like, now the question is that really improving the user experience? In my opinion, I would say no, because once again, a recreational player or casual player, they have to go download some like add-on just so that they can compete. Like, that seems like that's a barrier of entry from Hearthstone. So I'm not saying that Hearthstone is not. I'm not saying Gods Unchained players are more skilled than Hearthstone players. I'm just saying the skill is very different. I think Gods is more like science of deduction, you know, like playing more the traditional card game skill stuff. Hearthstone's like managing risk, which it's like, may as well.
Which do you think is more appealing to the most players?
I think, I mean, if you ask a casual, definitely the science.
If I would ask Roden.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask Roden. I mean, he doesn't play like competitive. He's not trying to climb the ladder. At least I don't think. So I think his opinion.
You don't think, but like he's actually secretly training to come for you.
Oh, I mean, look, we can ask him. Are you trying to climb ladder?
Yeah, I mean, climbing ladder is fun. I'm not trying to. The thing is, right? So
there can be only one card game master in that house.
Yeah, in order to get to the top rankings, right? You need to grind quite a lot, right? Good or not good, you need. Even if you're good and you have a good deck, you need to grind a lot of hours. I don't have time for that. I like to win in ranked games. When I go into ranked games, I will play ranked games in both Hearthstone and in Gods Unchained. I will want to win. I will aim to win. I will put together a deck in order to win, right? And make adjustments and read guides on what deck I should put together to win. But I'm not doing the grinding to get to a higher ranking. So for me, when I'm looking at the whole ranking system and the whole like win rates, I think I want to play a game that allows me to win off minimal experience sometimes and a little bit of RNG sometimes, right? It's maybe annoying to play against, it may be annoying to put together, but at the end of the day, if I'm a casual player and I go into the ranked game mode, or if I go into normal mode even, and I lose the 5 out of 5 games that I play, I lose, it's not going to be a fun experience, right? So these games, they do need to balance it in such a way where even the noobs get a win sometimes, which can be annoying for the pros.
Yeah.
But that's also life, right? And I guess your ELO system has to be quite good when it comes to this. And also the tough thing for Gods Unchained is that their player base is not as big as Hearthstone. So I think Hearthstone has an easier battle when it comes to maybe catering for the high end players, but also catering.
I think you'd be
for the local
surprised at
players
how
as
many
well.
players Gods Unchained has. I don't think it has more than Hearthstone, but I think it's close, to be completely honest.
No. It's
Really?
It's absolutely not close. I mean,
Are you
Hearthstone
sure?
isn't even.
I'm fairly sure
Gods
Gods
isn't
has
even
a
in the
million
league.
players.
No. In terms of active players, there's 10,000 active players a week according to DAP Radar for Gods Unchained. Down from the peak, which was about 80,000 a week, and then Hearthstone have 1.2 million a week. Hearthstone are insane.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like absolutely insane, and I think that's another one of my not criticisms, but that's another one of my points of difference as well of being. Anyway, we can get to that later.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah. Should we move on, guys, or do you guys want to keep
Oh, and
chatting
then
about that?
I was just gonna finish the Daniel's question with regards to
Sure.
which one would I invest in. I mean, obviously, I'm going to invest in Hearthstone just because of the sheer. I guess now that I know the player base is infinitely larger than Gods. So
No, let's say like well, no. Let's say just like you're looking at the game and their approach to, just like strictly from, like you say, like the more RNG, more like deck building.
Well,
Which do you think has the most potential for growth?
I mean, I'd be interested to see the
All else
player
equal.
count in the past years. I'll look it up now for Hearthstone.
No, just like disregarding player count, like everything else equal. Just looking at what do you think is a better approach for getting a wider audience and like more money, making more money.
Yeah,
From
I mean,
from what you said, from how you compared.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny. I think the RNG element and the discover mechanic is fun for a lot of people, particularly when they're starting out. I think it'd be unfair to say otherwise. Yeah, in terms, I mean, that's why Blizzard has pushed Hearthstone into that direction. I mean, that's, they're not stupid. Let's be honest. Like we like to think here that we're smarter than these corporates, but they hire the best people at the end of the day, and they've done all the research. I'm sure they've done a lot of psychological, research into it as well, and they've ticked the box for everything that is addictive, right? That's what it comes down to. In terms of loyalty from the community, you probably see these more indie games get a lot more what do you call it, retention, and as a result it might actually encourage them to spend more money. But does that actually equate to an increase in the absolute value or the absolute total value? Probably not. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, and this is kind of why the gaming industry at the moment, in my opinion, is just so crude, is that every big studio knows that don't care about your regulars, just go for the, in terms of profitability for your bottom line, you just go for the mainstream, go for the new recreational players. Who gives a shit about the players who've been playing for 10 years, because they're not the ones who are going to spend more money. It's going to be the people coming in, and that's their approach, unfortunately, and it's going to be the same here.
Okay. All right.
So let's get into the more Web3 crypto related stuff, the tokenomics, right? So this is going to be an interesting section, even though it looks brief. There are actually 4 currencies. I'll go through each one individually. So the first one is the actual token of Gods Unchained, which is the Gods token. It's the exclusive crypto token of Gods Unchained. It's basically a token that serves as the form of currency to buy packs, craft NFTs, which is minting certain cards onto the blockchain to trade, and vote on governance proposals. So obviously the packs one is quite interesting because each time you want to buy a pack, I believe, Ricky, you can answer this question. You can either buy in ETH or you can buy in Gods tokens. Is that correct?
Or IMX or USDC
or IMX.
Basically any token that's on Immutable.
Basically anything. Okay.
So I want to go into this a bit. I want to see from your perspective, Rodin, like how much, because that's been a theme lately, how much utility there is to, like, or demand, or how necessary is this Gods token?
Yeah. So in terms of the fact, so there's 3 points, as I said: buy packs, craft NFTs through minting certain cards onto the blockchain, and vote on governance. Now, the first point, buy packs, you can do it with any of the currencies, so I don't think there's too much utility there. In saying that, if you're a player that is, non-crypto native, that could be a good way to get players to buy packs without having to mess around with USDC and ETH and whatever. They earn gods by playing the game, and then straight away they can buy packs with it. There's no really fuckery that they need to do in order to access it. So that's one, I guess, small thing, but as I said, I do think it's small. The second point, actually the third point, but the second point, I'm just going to make it the second point. Governance, right? Governance, we've gone through it before. It's just bullshit. I don't believe in it. As many times that we've seen governance just be an absolute sham and just a facade, really. I don't think that this is any different, even though they might say that it's different, or they might give me a few examples where it's worked. In the long run, I don't think it works. And until we get a few examples of governance being implemented properly, my views on that is not going to change. So yeah, that point, I believe it's small utility as well. Now, the crafting NFTs, the third point and final point, it's basically you mint it. You use gods, right, as one of the two ingredients in order to transition some of the NFTs that you in order to transition some of the cards that you earned while playing the game, right? So I'll give you an example. I may earn a card. I'm going to leave. I may earn a card here. Let's go down, and I may have this card, right? I've got two of them. I may put on here, and I've got two of them, so I can actually fuse them, right? So what this means is, if you see that there's a lock on the top of these two cards, these are both common cards, but they're also common cards that haven't been minted onto the blockchain. Maybe that might sound a bit confusing, but basically think of them as like, let's say, free to play cards. They haven't been minted. They're not actually official NFTs. They're cards that I've earned by playing the game, right?
Yeah.
I can, however, mint one of them onto the blockchain if I have two of them. And as you can see, I need gods to perform this action. What I also need is another currency called Flux. And I put them together and two of these cards together. And then I actually mint an Enduring Shield card that I can sell on the marketplace, right?
Okay.
I know that's a bit confusing, and I'll get to what Flux and the rest of the currencies do in a second.
Okay.
But I think that the utility of gods when it comes to that is actually quite interesting, because you've got something that actually affects a process inside the game and a process of creating the NFT and creating the card inside the game, which I think has a little bit of value, right? Especially for collectors, especially for people that want to. So in that example I gave, it's putting a card onto the blockchain, but you can also have situations where you take two gold cards, right, which are just visually gold. That's all they are, a bit rarer. You put them together and you make a shadow card, which is this next stage of a rarity, of a card rarity, which, as I said, is purely visual. So there's a few things that you can do in that sense with the God token that I think is quite interesting. But I think that in general, I don't see the utility in this. So I don't think that is enough utility for me to say, wow, the Gods token is awesome. Compared to other games and compared to other crypto projects that have governance in them and using it as a form of currency to do things, I think it's a little bit better, because, as I said, it has that craft NFT component of it, which makes things a little bit interesting for the market. I think it's something that doesn't necessarily affect the game, but it more affects the collectability side.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's the first currency, right? First of all. The next currency is stars. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go to Flux instead, because I've mentioned Flux already. So Flux is the other component of the forging process, which I just talked about, right? So you need gods and you need some Flux. You put them together at a certain ratio. I don't know. I think the ratio changes depending on the card type, and then you craft your card, right? So you need Flux in order to make those tradable NFTs. That's the only thing that Flux is used for. Now, how you earn Flux is just by playing ranked games. I think that's pretty cool.
Okay.
That's a cool component of Flux. It encourages people to play ranked games and also climb the ladder, right? The third currency is Star, right? And the star is also earned by playing the game. It's earned by playing in ranked and in normal modes. So the star is the only utility of star is to actually purchase different cards on the store, on one of the stores, right? Now there's a star store specifically in this. So let's say I don't have enough money to buy cards on the marketplace, on the normal token trove immutable marketplace. I can use some of my star and buy cards and add them to my deck. Right. So this is a pretty cool way that players can earn cards from free to play. But as you can see, once again, they're locked over here, so they're not actually NFTs. They're not
Wait,
NFTs.
the second and fourth one are not locked.
Yes, yeah. So I believe those ones are tradable. That's why they're a little bit more expensive. You can see that the
Oh, yeah.
number 3. You see how this number 3 and this number 3 are both
Yeah.
common cards. They're both common cards, but this one is 1.8K. This one is 1K. Right.
Wait, how do you get the stars again?
Star is just by playing any mode.
Okay.
Any mode. Doesn't have to be ranked. So
Nice.
this is a good way. And I like the fact that it's got daily deal, it's got a welcome deal, weekly special, a shadow as well, this is what I was talking about when it comes to rarity. So there's gold, shadow, and diamond, I believe. And these are the different types that are different rarities, which people can collect and yeah. Now the fourth currency is fragments. So fragments are earned from the first 10 games. Over here, let me just have a look at my notes real quick. First 10 games for the day, right? The number of fragments earned in those 10 games depend on if you win or lose, the quality of cards you have. So like what I was talking about with the shadow, the gold, all that sort of stuff. And of course, your matchmaking rank, right? So there's a lot of different multipliers. And then also, furthermore, there's also community-based multipliers as well, depending on how many people are playing that day and how many people are playing ranked modes and different modes and stuff like that. It's very complicated, honestly. You've got 4 different types of currencies. I don't know how you feel, Daniel, about this information, like when I'm telling you, and hopefully I've explained it in a simplified way. But there's a lot of shit going on here.
So is fragment the ones? Yeah, I get it. You get it from the first 10 games, like, so you want to get your warm-up done, and you want to get your visualization done, meditation, like nutrition on point, because it's like the next 10 games that will dictate, have like very heavy influence here. So with those, it's basically a gods multiplier. You like earn gods by playing, and the more fragments, whatever fragment currency you get, the more gods you will get. Basically, it multiplies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you've got Flux
I think
as
they make
well.
sense.
You've got Star. You've got Gods. I think it makes sense when you're explaining it.
It makes sense, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I think you explained them well, and I understand like how you get all of them, and I understand. I definitely understood their role in the game. It was not hard to understand, but I think there is a balance. Like, you don't want to make a game too simple. You want to add some gradual layers of complexity to it, and to keep it engaging in the long term. I'm not sure if it's like a good way to do it, but yeah, I could see. I definitely like that for a lot of these you have to play. It makes people play. I think that's very important, and I think that's very good. Instead of like, I'll just buy shit. I guess you can just buy shit after marketplace if you want good cards, or you can play. So okay, I guess you can bypass that with money.
And I agree. I think it's a really good thing that it encourages you to play. I just think that, and maybe I'm not too.
Is there any benefit? Actually, I have a question here. Like, is there any benefit of like, let's say, going through all the trouble of like getting all of these tokens, whatever, to make your own NFTs? Is there any other benefit to it, or you can just like say, fuck that shit, I'm just gonna buy the cards I want? And
well, let's say I got
is there something I cannot buy with money that these tokens will do?
Maybe that's a question for Ricky. I believe you can buy all of the cards. I believe. I don't think there's any cards that you can't get.
Yeah, you can.
So
you
yeah, like,
can-
do I
you can
have
pretty
an
much buy
edge
everything.
as a player? Okay.
You can buy
Yeah.
everything. I think the only advantage to the crafting it is that you might have two cards which you earned somehow in game, and then now you can mint those cards onto the blockchain and sell them. Let's say they went up because of the meta change, and
Yeah.
you can mint a few of them and earn money from actually playing the game. I think that would
Okay.
be maybe the only advantage that I can see. For me, I'm not a tokenomics expert here, but for me, when it comes to in-game currencies and tokens, I think this is too many. Maybe they have had to do this in order to, balance it and make it comprehensive.
But only one of them
having
is crypto, right?
Yeah, the Gods token is the only one that's crypto, but you still, for a player that's
Okay.
playing the game, having to learn 4 different things and having to deal with 4 different collections and all that sort of stuff, for me is a little bit too much. Now the actual breakdown of the Gods token, the supply summary makes sense. The tokenomics do make sense. You got 34% play to earn reward, 25% Gods Unchained Reserve, 20% community and ecosystem fund, and then the rest is like token sale and community allocation and foundation, which is really the stuff at the start when it was released. So it seems pretty reasonable in terms of the supply summary. But as I said, I don't see too much utility coming out of this, especially when one of your main points is governance. You've lost me. You've honestly lost me if one of your main points is governance, and then your second point is buying packs, which you can basically spend with. You can buy with any currency. So yeah, this tokenomics
curious
side didn't
what-
really impress me so much.
Yeah, I'm curious what Ricky's perspective is like on all this and all the four currencies and stuff.
Yeah, I
think?
mean, unfortunately, this is one of the big reasons I didn't really buy a lot of Gods tokens, was just because I think it doesn't. I mean, look, I don't. Okay, first question is, I mean, I haven't really been keeping up to date, but I guess what is the governance? What is it?
So basically what they've said about governance, and I really should have seen if there's some examples of this, but they've said that you can vote on decisions when it comes to how the direction of the game. So I'm assuming that is like balancing stuff. I assume that's like changes to competitions, changes to ranked modes, stuff like that. I should have looked up some examples of potentially them have doing that. In fact, let me just quickly look it up now. But yeah, that's it. That's what they say.
Because I think it's a little bit like. But okay, so my first thoughts about the tokenomics is there's just too much shit going on. I don't like when it's complicated. I prefer at this stage, until we fix this play to earn issue, I don't like tokens in crypto games, unless you're doing something like Illuvium, which I don't think anyone's really going to do. Sorry, and for those of you who don't know, Illuvium's doing 100% revenue distribution from anything to do with the Illuvium ecosystem. So basically, if Illuvium makes, say, $500 million and you own 1% of the supply, you'll get, what's that, like 50 mil of revenue. So there's some like real, it's basically like holding a stock. Anyway.
Yeah. It's like investing in the company, basically.
Correct, yeah. My problem with this is the inflation. I mean, look, I haven't really looked into it too deeply recently. When they were releasing the Gods token, I didn't like the idea of Gods token. I actually, I'm fairly sure I only bought a little bit, but then I sold it because I was like, this doesn't do anything. Now, one thing I would argue, though, is governance, particularly in a game like this, is very, very important. And being able to control decisions for a trading card game, I think, is worth a lot of money compared to other games. And my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't looked into this recently, but basically people can put up proposals. Proposals get voted on by council members, I believe. I don't remember. And those council members who vote basically dictate the way the game goes. So, okay, sure, maybe you don't get to specifically vote on, at least this is my understanding, if you can't vote directly on proposals, you vote for someone who will vote on your behalf effectively, which I think is better than other governance things that we've seen. Like, for example, I believe Copper Pitch, he's probably one of the first, I'd say he's the first Gods Unchained YouTuber, and very, very smart dude. And I quite like his videos. I like his mentality. I do agree. Funnily enough, a lot of his tweets I actually agree with a lot about Web3 gaming. So to have someone like him in the council voting on these important proposals that, by the way, these proposals can be brought up by anyone, right? So if you have an idea, funnily enough, RDZ and I came up with an idea the other night. We can propose that to the council, and these people can look at it and be like, oh, it's actually a pretty good idea, blah, 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 and vote on it. So I think that concept is good, but then the question is, how much power do you actually have over the governance with the Gods token? Probably not as much as you like to think, but yeah, I think governance in this game is extremely important. So I think there is some value in the token itself there. As for the other stuff like the flux and the star credits, my understanding is that and a lot of us from back in the day, and unfortunately it hasn't really come, we held all our star currency because apparently it was going to be very important in future game modes. They're going to be creating other game modes like Hearthstone, which they said, this was probably like a year and a half ago now, because it was back when I was playing a lot. I used to never spend my star credits because there were rumors that those star credits will become important in other game modes. So there's a lot of utility there for star credit if they do actually publish these other game modes, which I think is good. As for the Flux, I mean, Flux is basically Gods. I'm fairly sure Flux was just exchanged to Gods tokens a while ago when they brought in the Forge. Basically, the Forge is, I think RDZ's already touched on it, but the Forge is you get to bring, a certain amount of cards. Yeah, can you just bring up the Forge? You can bring up a certain amount of cards so like 4 unminted cards, or is it 2 now? Oh, they must have changed it. Yeah, you basically just need a certain amount of cards and then use God's token to combine and fuse. I'm fairly sure the Flux gets converted into God's tokens. I can't remember how you do it, but I'm fairly sure that's how it works. So basically Gods and Flux is the same thing. So there's only really 2 currencies. Once again, just the whole tokenomics of it is too complicated. And for someone who's in the space and who looks at tokenomics a lot, it's still kind of complicated. I don't really see the utility
100%.
in it. I mean, I think the governance has some merit. The Gods token being used to fuse into skins gives the NFT some value, which is good. It's kind of like the breeding system in Axie, and I mean, I don't really want to be comparing this game to Axie because Axie's not doing too well and there's got some very big economic problems there, but yeah, I mean, there's glimpses, but I'm not sold on it, and that's why I haven't bought Gods tokens. For me personally, I'd prefer to just buy cards. Like cards like if you think about the NFTs, they actually have utility. You can use them in a deck. You can you can play them in tournaments. You can play them in ranked games. You can buy shadow, gold, diamond quality of the NFTs and flex. I guess for some people there's utility in that as well. So for me personally, if I'm going to invest in Gods, I'd personally just rather invest in my deck. That's why I like to buy a lot of cards. I don't think, for what it's worth, I don't think buying packs is a good investment. I've made that very clear in my other video. It's not, but at the same time, buying cards, like I had friends who used to trade cards. They'd used to read the patch notes coming into a new, development update, and they'd be like, holy shit, this card's going to be really big. It's going to be like, everyone's going to need to use this card in the meta. I think he bought like 20 or 30 cards at like 20 cents, and they ended up being like $5 each. Now it's not like crazy gains, but that's the fun. There's a fun element of that, trading the cards, predicting what's going to be in the meta. I think that element there is fun. So the NFTs itself, a fantastic. I don't know if you have a segment on NFTs specifically, but I would like to do a bit of a rant and spiel on why I think blockchain is so important for trading card games, and also explain why Hearthstone sucks a lot. But I don't know. Do you have a slide on NFTs, or is this an appropriate time now?
I've got a value proposition slide, which I'll go briefly go into
Okay.
NFTs.
I'll hold it for that then.
And yeah, you can hold it for that. And yeah, I think with the governance, I would agree with you. Normally, in theory, I would agree with you that for card games, particularly, very important to be able to vote for proposals. The issue is that I haven't seen good examples of this. And even with Gods Unchained, and as I said, I should have gone out and tried to look, spend a little bit of time maybe asking in their community and their Discord and whatnot. But I don't see the examples of where the community governance and that part of the utility has shined through into actually having an influence. When I see it, I'll believe it. And when I see it with other crypto projects as well, with governance and how they manage it effectively, I'll believe it. But I've seen too much fuckery in the space as a governance buzzword for me to really give that any credit or merit for now. All right, let's move on to adoption and user engagement. This is where the stats of active players a week comes into play. So as we discussed before, 10,000 active players a week, down from a peak of about 80,000 playing Gods Unchained a week. I think that was in basically the peak of the gaming bull market. The Web3 gaming bull market. And then this contrasts pretty significantly with Hearthstone, who have about 1.2 million active players a week. Hearthstone, I think, actually grew the number of players in Q3 of 2022. So they're, not doing too badly in terms of user base. They're definitely growing. That's obviously a huge competitor in the online card space, along with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel was another one that had significant weekly players, and then also Magic: The Gathering Arena as well was also quite big. The mobile release of Gods Unchained is something new. It's in alpha right now for Android, and it's planning on Immutable is planning on using that mobile release as a way to increase this 10,000 player user base. I think a big barrier for entry for growing this user base is the Web3 nature of the game. I think that's just the simple statement of why we're not seeing so many active players, because I do agree with you, Ricky. I think a game like this does deserve to have more players. I just think that the Web3
and the bad perception of NFTs, right?
Correct. Yep. Bad perception of NFTs and Ethereum collectibles and all that sort of stuff. I believe it's a significant value proposition, but it's just too complex for your average gamer. I will give the Immutable team a lot of credit for signing up, because the sign up process is very easy with new players. You don't actually need a wallet. You don't actually need crypto. You can actually sign up with your email. You can just sign up with traditional sign up methods that you have with normal games, but then you're faced with 4 different types of currencies, and you're faced with NFTs, and then you're faced with a bunch of stuff that is just too complex for your average gamer. And I know Immutable is aware of this, and they're one of the best companies in the space working to make it easier to adopt normies, really, because gaming is one of those things where you need to adopt the mainstream. You cannot survive if you don't, and that's exactly why Immutable is focusing on that. And yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, we can go straight into the value proposition.
Sure. Yeah.
So value proposition, obviously this is an alternative to Hearthstone. So if you are like Ricky and you're a salty little bitch when it comes to Hearthstone and their updates, it's an alternative to that game. Unfortunately, it's you can view that as either a positive or a negative. For me, it's a bit of an unfortunate, because it's basically a copy of Hearthstone with a few different features that you know, as I said, I went through at the start of the presentation, like the Sanctum, which was the selection of cards, 3 cards that both players can see and buy, that can really change the dynamics of the game. And as Ricky said, bring in an element of denying the player resources. And then, so there's a little bit of difference, but it's basically a carbon copy, right? Now the second point in terms of the comparison, I guess, or the value added, and probably the most important for me, when I'm thinking about a game like this, is the digital ownership for a card collectible game, right? And that's done obviously through Ethereum NFTs, ERC20 tokens. It's a clever way of interacting tokens into game utility and collectible, like the collectible cult, you could say. I think that's really important. And yet, obviously, this governance point, I don't even know if we need to go into this. It's a load of shit, and we recently have had the Arbitrum example of it being an absolute joke. So governance for me is no value whatsoever. I think there's, as you said, Ricky, there's an argument to be had of if it's a card game, is governance potentially something that can be used in the right way to influence decisions and therefore have value? Maybe, but I don't believe it. I don't believe that it's being used right now. I don't believe I can see any examples of it. So for me, load of shit. So yeah, I guess in conclusion of this value proposition bit is basically digital ownership for me. I think that's the only thing that I can see from my perspective, based on my research and based on me playing both of these games. The digital ownership is quite an important point. It's the only difference I see, but it is quite an important point because Hearthstone really does suck you. It really sucks you dry, and it doesn't really give you much in return other than fun game play. Now, for a lot of people, that's enough, right? But I guess if you're a player that's been playing this for years, you're putting in a significant amount of money into this game. And I think if they I think the advantage of NFT technology and digital ownership is that these game companies will still make similar amounts of money. That's the hypothesis, right? That they're going to make similar amounts of money without sacrificing customers getting juiced for money. And the reason, and the main way they do that is instead of initially throwing out these packs and making money by being quite predatory when it comes to new cards and new collectibles, they can make most of their money through secondary markets. I think that's a really important point. It's less predatory, and it's also more fair to the consumer. So yeah, that's my piece on value proposition.
Okay. All right. So I've quite a bit to say in the value proposition. So I think the first thing is, I don't think it's fair to say that this is a copy of Hearthstone, because people when Hearthstone came out were saying it was a copy of Magic the Gathering. So I mean, every card game is going to have some element of some pre-existing card game that's ever existed. So, and I don't think Hearthstone is that innovative in the card game space, to be completely honest. I think a lot of their mechanics did come from card games preceding that, particularly Magic. So yeah, from an innovation.
But yeah, but it's still relevant that it's like the most played one, right?
I mean, I don't know if Hearthstone is. I mean, I think Magic the Gathering might have a bigger player base, to be honest.
Online,
maybe even Yu-Gi-Oh!
Online, Hearthstone is the biggest one.
I mean, Magic the Gathering
I think by
have
far.
No, but Magic the Gathering isn't played online. It's land based.
It does have an offline component.
Yeah, but they have like different. It's not the same as Hearthstone though. The Magic the Gathering online has different versions which get split up, whereas Hearthstone is a one game that gets played through its platform. Whereas Magic the Gathering, you might like have a Magic the Gathering like Shadow Edition, and then that's completely separate. It's not sharing the same player base, if that makes sense. But yeah, anyway.
Sorry. So just like to add on that, to touch on that a bit. So yeah, you cannot really say it's a carbon copy of like Hearthstone, but I guess you could say it is a direct competitor to it.
Yeah, you can definitely say it's a competitor for sure. So the question is,
I mean, as I said, I would disagree. I would actually say it's a carbon copy. But anyway, you continue, Rick.
yeah, I mean, if anything, because I mean, the developers from Gods Unchained were Magic the Gathering. So if anything, there'd be more influence from the Magic the Gathering game than Hearthstone. I actually, like, I don't think anyone who is really fundamentally about card games would not copy Hearthstone's mechanics, to be completely honest. Hearthstone mechanics are far from your traditional card game. I think, yeah, most of the new card games that I've seen, like, for example, Skyweaver is a good example of a very innovative card game, but that is a little bit too complicated. Most of the new card games are moving away from the Hearthstone style, to be completely honest.
Okay.
But anyway, back to my point. So in terms of Hearthstone, okay, I guess I guess most of this has to come from, like, why would someone move from Hearthstone to Gods, right? And we'll keep that as the crux of the argument, right? So yes, I mean, from what we spoke about earlier, I think Hearthstone, yeah, just has a lot more game modes. They have the RNG element, which is going to attract newer players. But the biggest thing, which I think Hearthstone, and I actually think this is like, I think people who play Hearthstone, I mean, like, I know RDZ plays Hearthstone. Like, I actually think people should, like, literally cancel Hearthstone. I think Hearthstone and Blizzard have done the scummiest move in trading card games. Like, the funny thing is they don't even classify Hearthstone as a trading card game. They classify it as a collectible card game. And the reason why they say that is because you can't trade. Name me one card game where you can't trade. Like, that is the most ridiculous thing. To not be able to trade, you actually just lose. And this is where I think Hearthstone actually loses a lot of people, is you lose, like, if you look at something like Pokemon, right? I would say most of the people who have Pokemon cards are collectors. They're not playing the game. In fact, I personally think the Pokemon card game itself mechanically is pretty boring. I don't think there's a lot of, it's not very skilled. It's very one-dimensional. So the fact that Hearthstone doesn't have the trading element, and this doesn't even need to have blockchain. Like, you actually don't need to have blockchain to do the trading element, is the biggest fucking scam of all time. And the problem is they get these people addicted to the game. You know, pack openings are effectively loot boxes, which are going to get banned, thank God. And people are just, like, continually gambling on something that they don't even get any reward. Like, we make fun of, you know, I mean, a lot of mainstream people make fun of Web3 games, like, oh, you know, you lost 95% of your value in NFTs. It's like, cool, you got 100% scammed by Hearthstone and Blizzard. So good work. At least I can get like 5 cents for the $1 card that I bought. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing for me, and that's a big reason why I stopped playing Hearthstone, because I realized I probably spent, honestly, like close to $1,000 in Hearthstone. And then I can't trade those cards. I can't do anything with it. Like, I don't like the game anymore because it's just turned to shit. So what do I do, right? And I've spent so much money. When you look at something like traditional trading card games, for example, like Magic the Gathering, for example, if you stop playing Magic the Gathering, there is a secondary market for these cards. You go out, you go to eBay, I don't know, you go to these meetups, you go to a card shop, particularly in Asia, like when I went to Japan, I told you guys, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Duel Masters, like, this is a big industry. Like, this is a huge industry. A lot bigger than I thought, to be completely honest, because in Australia, you don't really see a lot of this sort of stuff. And you probably don't see that over there in Romania. But, you know, there's a card shop on every second street. And it's packed. Like, everyone's in there. You know, everyone's buying, selling. There's fucking hundreds of people playing tournaments and stuff like that. And when you go and see that, you really start to realize, like, holy shit, the secondary market, that's actually part of the trading card industry. And the fact that Hearthstone doesn't even allow you to do anything like that, there's no opportunity for that, is like actually a spit in the face in the trading card industry. So the reason why NFT technology is so important to trading card games, and look, there are people out there, and we are skeptical as well, don't get me wrong, but Web3 game, if anyone tries to tell me that blockchain is not good for Web3, for trading card games, either has no idea about trading card games or has no idea about blockchain technology. It is the perfect match. There is no other game genre that could benefit more than NFT technology than trading card games. And let me explain to you guys why. So the first thing, right, is authenticity is super important. At the moment, we have these third-party, let's call them third-party companies who get paid to authenticate cards, right? So for example, I picked up some Pokemon cards in Japan and a couple of them quite rare. Now, I know they're legit because I got them out of a pack, and I mean, unless the packs were fraudulent, which does happen for what it's worth, these cards are legit. But the problem is I can't then go and sell it to you, Daniel, because you're going to be like, look, Ricky, I trust you, but I can't trust the source that you got your card from. And now the problem is, well, fuck, now how am I going to get him to trust that my card is legit? Like, I know I opened it in a pack, but there's no way to prove it. I got to go to this third-party company who, for what it's worth, don't have a foolproof method. I mean, go watch the Jake. I mean, I don't know if the Logan Paul video was faked or not, but he spent, I think, like $3 million on a box of Pokemon cards, which were faked and was authenticated by one of these guys. So, like, that's just already stupid on its own. I have to go to this guy, pay him like $25 to get my like $10 card authenticated. Like, I mean, how stupid is that already? And all of a sudden, that part of the industry is already gone. The brilliant thing about NFT technology is you can authenticate this. Anyone can authenticate it. It's all transparent. It's all open. I can go to Etherscan. I can check who created the token. I can check how many of these tokens exist. There's big scandals in the trading card industry. There's employees who will mark boxes of cards that they know are going to have rare packs in it. So what they do is they mark it and then they go to the shops and then buy the pack. Like, it is one of the most fraudulent industries that we have in terms of gaming. And the best way to authenticate and check how many exist in circulation is through blockchain technology. So for me, any trading card game that utilizes NFTs is smart, and I actually think is the future. I think anyone who's developing a trading card game not using blockchain technology is living in the past. And I think that's something that people need to get really, really clear. It is the best use case in gaming. Now, we can sit here and we can argue about FPSs, we can argue about MOBAs, we can argue about anything else, even MMORPGs, about the benefits of NFT technology in these game genres. But if you're going to come here and tell me otherwise, either you're not in the trading card industry, or you just don't know anything about NFTs. That's my opinion, and I think that's the biggest value proposition. I don't care. I could make a game. I could just make a card game now off the top of my head, and as long as it uses NFT technology, the security is there, it has a decent marketplace that we're not getting absolutely smashed on in terms of fees. That being said, I did just try and list one of my cards today, and apparently there's 9% in fees. 5% goes to the creator, which is Gods Unchained. 2% goes to the protocol fees, and then I think it's 2% goes to Immutable for providing the marketplace service. So now I'm getting charged 9%. So it's actually getting pretty close to the Steam marketplace, still cheaper, but yeah, that's I guess that would be a negative to Gods Unchained, is that the marketplace fees are actually quite high for this. But anyway, my point is NFT technology and card games is important. Immutable set up a gasless system. So if I do, let's say I don't even want to trade on the marketplace. Let's say, Daniel messages me on Discord and goes, yo, you have a shadow, I don't know, you have a shadow card. I have a shadow card. Do you want to just do a straight trade? Sure, we can do it. It's free. That's the whole point of trading card games. Now, I know Hearthstone specifically says collectible card game, but I mean, that's just a cop-out way of saying, like, not trying to step on anyone's toes by saying TCG. But let's be honest, it is meant to be a trading card game. You can't trade any of the cards. The game mechanics have gone to shit. I actually just had a look at a graph. They actually lost a lot of players between 2019 and 2020, which is interesting because that is during COVID. So you would expect the player count for Hearthstone to go up during that period. I think once Gods gets onto mobile, it's going to be really good because, let's be honest, the mobile gaming industry is massive, onboarding players in. And I actually think by putting it on mobile, it actually reduces a lot of the whole Web3 NFT sort of stuff because, when you download the game, you just log in. You're not going to be logging in through your MetaMask. You just log in through your account and just play the game. So I think that will actually solve a lot of problems. So I'm quite happy about the vision of where the game is going, and the feedback that people have said who played the alpha on Twitter have been very positive. They said the game runs really smoothly and the interface looks quite good on mobile. So there's a long-winded way of saying I think Hearthstone's a piece of shit. Gods Unchained is the future. Is Gods Unchained the perfect trading card game? Probably not. I still think there's a lot of things that need to get fixed. I think meta is one of the biggest things that they need to get on top of, and just providing new, like RDZ said earlier in the stream, providing quests, challenges, new game modes, which I actually just had a look. There's an IIP, there's a proposal from one of the community members about some new ranked mode which got approved. So, you know, there's a lot of potential, and they've got a good foundation to build off. And I think I don't think this is the best game, but I think this is the best blockchain game because of the genre and the way they've actually incorporated the NFT. I think the tokenomics kind of suck, to be completely honest. That's probably the only downside of this project, but I think there's a lot of potential with Gods.
Okay. You actually convinced me with the trading part, with like Hearthstone not having trading in a trading card game.
Let me tell you a little bit. When you go to the cinema, I know that we don't do this often. Right?
Hey, I went last night.
When you go into the cinema,
Don't make assumptions.
when you pay for your film, you watch your film, and when you walk out of that film, do you feel you're scammed?
If
Last night,
if the movie was shit,
I don't feel
yes. And a lot of movies in the cinema
of course. But if the movie was good and you were entertained for an hour and a half,
yeah, of course, I'd be like, yeah, it's worth it.
So isn't that really what you're paying for when you play for games like Hearthstone? Now, I'm not disagreeing with the fact that your value proposition in terms of NFTs and the fact that there's secondary marketplace, this fact that there's trading is not significant. I actually really agree with you on that. I think it's stupid that some of these games don't have the facility to trade, right? Or they don't have some sort of secondary market, because that's a really good feature to have in a lot of these games, right? But my point is that this system does exist, right? This is a system of you create something that is entertaining enough and people pay for that, right? If you do not provide an alternative to that is good enough for the people to turn around and say, okay, now we can see the benefits in this other stuff, then that's going to continue, right? Now, there are definitely benefits in the Gods Unchained, structure, and also in NFTs that people haven't realized yet. There's barriers to entry. Of course, we know that it's still quite early when it comes to these things, but I can understand why people pay for Gods Unchained, right? I don't think it's a scam. I don't think it's a scam at all. I think it makes sense that people are paying for something that they are enjoying. I have a very good friend that's been playing Hearthstone for years. I actually had a chat about this to him over the weekend. And I asked him, are you going to pay for the expansions? And he's like, yeah, on average, I just need to pay for the initial expansion and some initial packs, which cost me between $70 to $100 a year. Not a year, per expansion. And then I'm happy to pay that. That's really worth it for me. And then the rest of the cards or the rest of the unlocks I can do by myself through questing and through passive income in the game, blah, blah, blah. And then that's how he justifies it. So I think it makes sense what Hearthstone's doing as a business model, and it's obviously working for them. But yeah, I do agree with you, Ricky, in the sense of the technology behind NFTs, the technology of applying NFTs to card collectibles in particular is unmatched. Like, they should all be looking at that, all of the card companies. And I also agree with the part of Hearthstone, the fact that they don't have the secondary market at all. They don't have some sort of trading facility, or they don't have some sort of secondary buying facility. Is just stupid. It's just stupid. It's a really good component of collectibles. But as I said, I also disagree with you in the sense that Hearthstone, its current model it makes sense. It makes sense.
Okay, but all right. So I personally don't think the film one is a fair example, and the reason why I say that is because the better example would be you go into a film, into a cinema, and they go, you watch the first, I don't know, 1/3 of the film, and then the film shuts off, and they go, oh, to watch the next third, you need to spend another $50 to watch the film, and then you're like, okay, I'll pay for that, and then in the final third, it stops again and it goes, oh, you need to pay another $50, and you're like, would you be happy about that? Sure, the film is good, but it's a bit scummy what they're doing. It's kind of what Hearthstone does. A new expansion rolls in, the previous expansion, or maybe not exactly the previous one, but the last 2 or 3 gets rotated out of the season. Now longer you're not allowed to play that in competitive. It gets moved out of the competitive scene, and you're like, fuck. Well, now to play competitive in the next season, I need to spend another 50 to, or whatever he pays, $70 to $100 per expansion. Like that's not good.
Okay.
That's not good. That's not good business. That is a scam, in my opinion. Yes, you're getting entertainment, but it feels a bit scummy.
No, I disagree with that. I think it's not the right example to use. I think for me, the right example to use would be if we're using the cinema movie thing, it would be Fast and the Furious. You've got Fast and the Furious, and it's got 9 separate movies. So they're juicing the initial ideas, the initial success, the initial expansions, and people pay for them. And so they've got a right to juice it, right? It's not a scam. They're entertaining people with various releases. So I don't think it's fair to say that it's like on each component they are juicing. I think it's more, as I said, like Fast and the Furious. It's got 9 fucking Fast and the Furious movies. They don't need to make 9, and they're just at this point they're just completely juicing people with visuals and side effects, and their storyline is not even that good anymore. But they're able to do that for entertainment purposes, and it works.
But the thing is, I can't use those cards in competitive again. There's a big difference between, like, I can go watch Fast and the Furious 1 multiple times.
Yeah, you can rewatch.
But once that card is rotated out of the season, because it's in the best incentive for Blizzard to rotate those cards out so people buy the new packs. It's completely different. I can go and watch Fast and the Furious 1 a million times if I want to, even though it is phased out. It's considered old. The Hearthstone cards that get rotated out are only playable in Wild, and I can't use them in competitive. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, you're actually creating a barrier to not use those cards in a competitive scene. That doesn't seem fair.
And no, but that's so I would say it's the same thing as the Fast and the Furious example, because essentially what they're doing is they're forcing you to watch the new one, right? They want you to watch the new one to see what happens in the storyline. You have to pay for the new content and use the new content. I agree with you. I agree with you in the sense of the fact that you can't, you can actually use them in wild mode. There are certain modes where you can use every card in the deck, but yeah, it is a little bit scummy, I would say. It is a little bit predatory. As I said before, I feel like the Hearthstone is definitely predatory, to lock people into like a standard mode where, you know, you can only use the last 4 expansions. But as a business, they have a right to do that. And also as an entertainment company, they have a right to make more movies and essentially force you to, you're essentially getting forced to watch those movies. There's only so many times you can rewatch a Fast and the Furious.
I don't think, but you're not, but I don't think the example is still true, because in Fast and Furious 9, I don't need to watch Fast and the Furious 9. If I want to play competitive in Hearthstone, I have to buy the new expansion. There's a very big difference there. You have to buy the expansion to play ranked.
Well, no, I can survive off of, hold on, I can survive off of the normal packs. I can survive off of the passive income that I get from quests to buy standard packs, and I can still play standard mode. I just won't have access to the full range of facilities, right? So I need to pay extra to get the new content, which is how things work in capitalism. You need to pay extra in order to receive the new form of entertainment. Hearthstone doesn't completely lock you, because it says you can still, well, give you packs. They actually give you quite a lot of packs when a new season comes out. When I logged on today, they gave me 4 packs if I played a number of games to the new season as a welcome back thing, right? But I know they also do that for players when a new expansion comes out. Also, they gave me a bunch of gold if I did certain side quests, which I'm going to finish this week, and then I can use that gold to buy packs from the new expansion, right? So there are ways that you can do that. But if I want all of the cards and if I want the full comprehensive experience of the expansion, I need to spend that money. And that's why I think the example stays true, because if you want to they're not forcing you. They are just saying you want the full experience, you got to pay for it. And that's capitalism, mate. Welcome to the real world.
Yeah, but once again, this is why I'm saying the value proposition for Gods works, is because Gods will make more money, arguably, by creating a system where you can trade your cards and they get a cut. They don't need to keep selling you new expansions to make money. They just need to encourage you to trade. And I mean, trading card games, fundamentally, people are trading regardless. Like, then I don't need you to encourage me to trade my card. If I get bored of playing a deck, I buy a new deck. I sell my current deck, I buy my new deck. Boom. Every time I sell my card, they get, 9% now, 5% to the royalties, blah, blah, blah. My other counterpoint to that would be, let's say there's one season where you really get into Hearthstone. You spend like $200-300 because you want every single card, right? And you play it, you reach the top rank, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I've done it. I'm going to take a break for three seasons. I come back. I've spent $200-300 on this expansion, and I come back to the game, and now these same cards that I used to use in ranked are no longer able to be used in ranked. I can't trade them out. I can't disenchant them. I can't do anything. So the barrier is still there. Like I don't see, like, yes, you can say it's capitalism, but that still doesn't change the fact that it's scummy. Like, what they're doing is scummy because they are locking you in. They're changing the rules of trading cards by making you not trade, which I think fundamentally is not good. And, anyone who's really into trading card games will probably agree with me in the sense, and that's why Hearthstone was losing a lot of players in that period, was because people were just getting sick of this. They're like, dude, I've spent like it was like me personally. I spent like, I don't know, $500-600. And there was a lot of seasons where I went ham. I paid for the full experience, and I come back and I'm like, I just want to play ranked again. And yes, I can get these cards, but I just spent $200-300 in this one expansion. You're telling me I can't use these cards in ranked? Like that's ridiculous, in my opinion. They're artificially they're artificially creating barriers to entry. And yes, you can say it's capitalism, but that's not good business. And when people start to learn it's not good business, they'll move to something else. And hopefully that's kind of where we're hoping that Gods can kind of fill that gap and actually utilize NFT technology and provide an alternative. And yes, you're right. At the end of the day, it's a free market. If people want to do that, and if your friend wants to continue playing Hearthstone, that's his prerogative. I just think there's better options out there in terms of good business. And for me personally, I prefer to support good business over shitty business. Shitty business models.
Yeah, I mean, I for what it's worth, I agree that NFTs are the way to go when it comes to this. I think there's a lot of advantages, especially secondary market sales. There's just no good examples of it yet. So right now we're dealing in a situation where we have to wait and see what happens. I think at the end of the day, if you look at things as a business, Hearthstone has no competition. They're the number one. Their practice is questionable. I also agree with that as well. But people are paying for it, and people are not seeing an alternative. Hopefully, Gods Unchained can become that alternative and move players across. But at the moment, they're not even in the discussion, and that leads me to the conclusion as well, because I also like Gods Unchained. I feel like they can change a few things as well. It's a very similar game to Hearthstone, and given Hearthstone's success, we should see Gods Unchained compete, right? It utilizes NFT technology in a smart way. That whole card collectible stuff is really good. The complex mechanics doesn't help it, and features are not so user friendly, but that's something that obviously they can improve, and they should be improving. Balancing issues with some cards being overpowered. Hearthstone has that same issue as well. It's just a matter of having a big enough team really to do that, and I think that should happen. But my biggest issue with Gods Unchained is It's got a declining player base. Yes, we're in a bull market, bear market, etc. Hearthstone still has an immense player base that's very strong. They're competing with Hearthstone, but they're not in the competition. This is where I don't know what their plans are. Maybe it'll take them more time. But at the same time, if you've made a carbon, it's a close to, maybe we can't say carbon copy, but close to carbon copy of the game, why aren't they in the competition after 5 years? Why are they? Obviously, there's a lot of barriers to entry with crypto, with NFTs. People don't want to get into the game, but I think there's a lot of stuff for them to still develop. I think as good as they are, and as good as the game is, there's a lot of areas for them to develop, because having 10,000 players a week is nothing. And as much as we're criticizing Hearthstone as well when it comes to their predatory tactics, which I agree with. They are a predatory company, and I think they incentivize just spending endless amounts of money, which I think they've actually looks like they've balanced based on my 2 to 3 hours of gameplay today. I feel like it's a little bit more balanced in that sense, but I haven't gone into the harder components of the game, the more grindy components of the game. Seems like they're balancing it, but at the end of the day, it does have predatory features, Hearthstone, but they're still by far the biggest online collectible game. And we need to, I guess, hope and pray that Gods Unchained is going to do some things. I can see I haven't played Hearthstone in over 6 months. I haven't played Gods Unchained in over 6 months. I can see changes in Hearthstone. I can't see changes in Gods Unchained, right? And for me, as a casual gamer, I've played both of them today. I want Gods Unchained to do well. I like what they're doing with the technology, but I want to play Hearthstone, right? I want to go click play Hearthstone, and I think that's something that Gods needs to think about very seriously, especially given that they've had 5 years of production and millions of dollars spent. But yeah, that's it. That's it from me, guys. So I don't know if you guys had anything else to discuss, if you wanted to do any more. I mean, we've basically covered most
So you're kind of
of the
like
things
here,
as
like
well.
you're
We've
kind
had
of
a good
saying
discussion
that
as well.
you're saying like they are just like not bringing enough innovation compared to something like Hearthstone, which they are like in competition with.
They've got harder barriers to entry, Gods Unchained, but yeah, as I said, I think they're not bringing enough at the moment onto the table. Obviously, they're not, because the market is not responding to them. So they've just got to find a way to bring this technology to light, because I agree with Ricky that card collectible games should be digital in the future. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect partnership. It's one of the more serious applications of NFTs I can think of, and
I
a
agree.
lot of my friends agree. A lot of my friends agree when it comes to the Hearthstone player, for example, that says I'm happy to spend money, and he's a competitive player as well. He gets top ranks every season. He also says, the whole NFT thing, I'm not sure about, but if it had it in Hearthstone, it would be a perfect partnership. So I think they've just got to find a way, to push that onto the market. And I really don't think they're doing enough. I don't think they're doing enough. The expansions are good, but as Ricky said, there's not a whole lot of things that are cards that are being released. They're smaller expansions and game modes. You've got 5 years. Why are there no more game modes? So if we want to be critical, there's a few things to be critical of. But in general, I think there needs to be more done by Gods if they want to compete with Hearthstone. If not, they can fucking release their packs and make 10 mil a year from commissions from the token trove, which I'm sure they're making close to that figure from their commissions from secondary sales, even with a small player base. But if they want to change the space, they need to do more. They're not competing with Hearthstone right now. They're not in the conversation, honestly.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Ricky?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to compete with Hearthstone. You got Blizzard backing them. I mean, you also got to remember they got Blizzard, one of the biggest gaming studios in the world. They can literally make any game genre and compete with anyone. So I think it's hard to compete with them. For an indie team, though, I think they're doing quite well. I mean, I think Roden's being a little bit too critical on them. Then they're, like I guarantee you, if Blizzard wanted to make any game, it would be close to the top in any genre. That being said, they actually had one MOBA that didn't do too well. I forgot what it was, but yeah, basically, what
Heroes
does
of
Gods?
the Storm?
Yeah, Heroes of the Storm. I don't think it did too well, and also Overwatch has been a bit of a flop, to be honest.
Sorry, I will just make a quick comment on that. I agree. We're talking about a big boy in Blizzard here. They're backed by Blizzard, and also they've got the advantages of World of Warcraft lore and World of Warcraft artwork as well. But I will say, like, Immutable is it's not a fucking indie studio. You know what I mean? Like they're valued at 2.5 billion. They've been working on this for 5 years. I mean, yes, we can give them a break, but at the same time, you got to put a little bit of pressure after 5 years. You got to put a little bit of criticism, and for me, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but I mean, it's 2.5 billion now. Back 5 years ago, they were probably worth a couple $100,000. And then they probably only really got a lot of funding, probably in the last year and a half when they got that big VC. So I mean, it's really, and they did sack a lot of their Gods Unchained team as well when they got the new money. So potentially, a lot of money got flooded into the team. I mean, you also got to remember Blizzard's $60 billion. That's 30x bigger than Immutable. I don't think Immutable is anywhere near as big as Blizzard. So.
That's not what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that they've definitely got a big difference in terms of studios. But what I meant was Immutable's no indie small studio run by 20 guys. There's 250 employees. It's a big organization now. So what I'm saying is maybe not so much for the past, but definitely this year and beyond, they've got to face some criticism. They've got to face a bit more pressure because they have the money, they have the team. So why don't they have the players?
Okay, but once again, there's a bit of misinformation here. It's 250 split between Immutable, Gods Unchained, and Guild of Guardians. So it's not 250 people on Gods. You remember, Illuvium has just over 200, and they're not going to be anywhere near as big as any of these big studios. So, realistically, there's probably only like 50, 60 people on Gods, which is not a big team. And then a lot of that funding gets pushed into Immutable's actual marketplace, as opposed to Gods itself. I think for where Gods is at, I think it's quite good. I think the introduction of the mobile game is going to be a big game changer. We've spoken a lot about how important the mobile gaming industry is to growing your studio. So, and like I said, a lot of people who played the mobile version of Gods were pretty happy with it. It seemed to run pretty smoothly, and that'll definitely onboard new people. What does Gods need to do? I agree. The one thing I would agree is that the game modes. I mean, when I played competitively a year and a half ago, I was expecting some sort of new game mode. That's why I saved my stars, and we still haven't really seen it. I also think the social elements could be improved. Like, do you mind opening up the Gods lobby for a second? If we have a look at the social, I mean, to play against your mate, I mean, this is really, really old school, but if you go to direct challenge, you got to type in a code. I mean, like that, come on. That's a little bit like, I mean, that's a little bit old school. Feels like I'm playing, some old school card game. I mean, the UI could be fixed a little bit. They were also slow to bring in something that I was really annoyed at is they took a really long time to bring up the play history. Play history bar is something common in a lot of card games. It allows you to track what your opponent just used. You might look away for a couple seconds and you turn back and you're like, oh, my board's cleared. How the fuck did that happen? You need to kind of know the history. They only brought that in fairly recently. So there's definitely things that are slow, but at the same time, they're releasing expansions in a timely manner. They've got insane community events all the time. Their player base has grown significantly, particularly in the bull market. I mean, obviously in a bear market, it's not so good. I mean, one thing I like to look at is activity on Reddit for Web3 games. Gods Unchained is the only Web3 game with a big active Reddit base. I think they have around 20,000 people. It's obviously not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but for Web3, it's quite big and it's always active. People are posting. The Discord's always popping off. They're trying to bring in, esports and tournaments, and there's quite a. Well, I mean, I'll give a shout out to Copper Pitch because I think he's done a really good job at content creation and creating community events and being a vocal person about the way Gods is moving, and I think he has influenced a lot of their decisions. So yeah, I mean, I would say I'm happy with where it's going. I think the mobile thing is the biggest thing. Yeah, I mean, is it going to compete with Hearthstone? I mean, is that? But at the same time, is that their objective? Are they actually trying to overtake Hearthstone, or are they trying to provide an alternative? I mean, I think the biggest thing is the NFT, Web3, crypto. Anytime you mention those words, you're just instantly losing 80% of people's interest. So they're also dealing with that. So the fact that they've actually got a player base, they're actually making money, they've got expansions coming out, despite the negative perception of the industry, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of quality of life issues that need to be fixed. But, hopefully as they grow, they'll also grow the game and hopefully turn it into something to actually compete with Hearthstone.
Yeah, I think my criticism is more, as I said, tailored towards the future, right? So they've done a great job till now. It's all good. I think they are for sure trying to compete with Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering online and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel as well. I think they are for sure going for that market. And they've done a good job to actually have a functioning game. It's now a matter of, okay, how do they actually start getting becoming a threat to some of these bigger card games, and that's where my criticism is more going to come from in the future, not necessarily now. I think as I'm talking about it, it's maybe a bit unfair to straight away give them shit for not being able to compete. But I for sure will give them shit because they in the future, in the next maybe 12 months, when they have the resources, they have the team, and if it doesn't take hold, then there's definitely going to be some question marks asked.
Questions to ask or question marks?
Question marks.
You cannot combine them.
Asked.
No, you cannot
asked. I can't.
No, you
Okay,
cannot.
I'm
combine.
fairly sure it's just questions asked or question
Oh, whatever,
marks.
man. I got a fucking Romanian teaching me how to speak English. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't
There
it?
you go.
But yeah. And as I said, I really do enjoy playing this game. It's one of those games in crypto that it's fun to play. And I think once again, going back to the Hearthstone comparison, it is because I like Hearthstone that I like this game, because it's so similar.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see how they go.
Okay.
Daniel, any final thoughts? I mean, you're pretty neutral to this. I mean, I've obviously got a bit of a bias against Hearthstone. RDZ has a bit of a bias with Hearthstone. You're a neutral.
Yeah.
You're a neutral to this, and you don't actually play trading card games. But what's your opinion of all of this after we've had this discussion tonight?
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I did not talk too much. I don't really play card games. My only experience with card games was playing Gods Unchained for a few hours basically. So I have only a basic understanding. Yeah, when I look at projects, I like to as well look for the future potential and what kind of gap are they filling in the market. I definitely agree with your point of the trading card element is a pretty important one, but at the same time, I kind of have to ask how important, because Hearthstone obviously doesn't offer that, but how pissed are people about this actually? Wait, I'm going off camera here. I just realized. Yeah, so how important is it actually? Because I agree with you, but like then I'm thinking like people are still enjoying Hearthstone. People are still like playing it a ton. There's not like a huge heaps of people flocking to Gods Unchained. So maybe that's not as like for the online world, at least. Like I can see like how in real life that's a very key element. But for the online world, maybe I don't know, maybe that's not such it's not such a big feature. It's not like such like huge demand for it. Or like it's not like a make or break for a game. So I kind of in between on that argument of collectible, like what collecting game versus trading card game. From the outside, again, not having too much knowledge, again, with this argument that I just said, apart from this, I don't see too much innovation. I think if you are competing with like a big company as Blizzard, you want to have like take it to the next level, but in an obvious way, not like incorporate some small thing like, oh yeah, we did it. I think you really need to disrupt the industry if you want to make it big and take over, because people are not gonna, let's say, yeah, again, like let's go on this narrative of like they are card games overall. So I don't think they address the same. They are in the same industry. They address like basically the same target market. If you want to take the customers away from someone like Blizzard, you're not gonna do it by making it making a very similar game. That's my view on Gods Unchained. I think it's. I know it's I know it has a ton of quite a few differences, but I don't see how it makes it like much better. Basically, I don't see like the huge innovation. One is NFTs, but people hate NFTs now. So yeah, that's kind of like overall my take. I don't see a lot of potential, maybe because I'm also biased against this genre. I don't play it, but also I don't see enough disruption in the space by something like Gods Unchained. If anything, I think it's trying to be like, oh, here's an alternative that's slightly better. That's how I see it.
Just to comment on the similarity thing. I actually think, funnily enough, similarity is good if you are trying to get people to come over. I mean, we've seen examples with League of Legends. We've seen examples with Valorant. The question is the alternative better? So that's the question. And
but it has to be, so for people to switch from a product they are already using, because it's not like there's gonna be new card game players. Well, there are new people being born, but it's not they're gonna just pop off the scene. They are already using the product, which is like the main online card game now is Hearthstone, right? So in order for someone to switch the product they are already using to a different product, the other product should not be like similar quality, should not be like slightly higher quality. It has to be like much higher to incentivize people switching the product they are currently using, that they are used to.
I don't know if I would completely agree with that. I mean, I'm just going to use Valorant and League of Legends. I mean, League of Legends was literally built off Dota. There was nothing really different except, I guess, the way your animation on minions and the whole denial of minions. It's the same game at the fundamental level. You have different heroes, you have different champions, sure, but all the League of Legends.
Quite a few different mechanics, and there was Dota was like a map from Warcraft 3, like having a standalone version of the game that like Dota is a map of Warcraft 3, so it's basically it had the constraints of Warcraft 3. League of Legends basically came removing all the mechanics limitations, like all the limitations from like Warcraft 3, because it's a standalone game. And yeah, I guess it's.
I mean, if you compare it in 2023, but when League of Legends first came out and I actually played beta League of Legends, it was literally the same as Dota. The champions were exactly the same. It was the exact same thing. The reason why League of Legends became so popular is because it was more noob friendly, and I guess this is the theme of today's discussion is that Hearthstone is more new, in my opinion, is more new consumer friendly. League of Legends was the same. The reason now, if we look at Valorant and Counter-Strike,
Also, why I gave League of Legends a try, and why like the main. So I think this is big as the existing player pool. Basically, the guy who was making the Dota maps built League of Legends. Like now Ice Frog. I think like there were like multiple guys maybe, but whatever. Like Ice Frog, the guy who was making the Dota maps, said like, okay, we're actually building a standalone Dota version, which is called League of Legends.
Yeah.
So I think that was also a big reason. Like the head creator at Hearthstone saying, hey, we're gonna make a new. we're gonna build a new Hearthstone, but better.
Yeah,
like, I think that.
I'm not saying, for what it's worth, I'm not saying Gods is a better version of Hearthstone, not yet anyway. But what I'm saying is the concept of similar games, I actually think attracts people a lot better, because when I go and play Hearthstone, I go, fuck, well, if I could play Hearthstone without all these bullshit limitations that I don't like in another game, I would instantly move. And I think a lot of people would move. My example with League of Legends and Dota is the same thing. Dota was annoying because you had to like load into Warcraft 3 and play a mod, and then, and the UI wasn't super clean and stuff like that. But at the same time, fundamentally, League was very similar. Even the champions, they had the same abilities, all the same thing. The other interesting thing at that time was that Dota 2 was announced. It was already in development, yet people were still moving over to League, and no one really moved back from League to Dota 2. So that's another interesting thing as well. And then when we look at something like Valorant and Counter-Strike, I mean, Valorant is a dead copy of Counter-Strike, except they just added a few abilities. And the abilities are obviously, like some of the guys just has smoke grenades, some guys has flash. Like they're effectively the same thing.
Come on, I know. Like, come on, Valorant with the like hero abilities is like it's a huge change to the mechanics of the game, to the Counter-Strike game.
But in terms of like the concept of it, it is. I mean, they basically said we're making a better.
It's
version
like Counter-Strike meets Dota, right?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, you have 3 abilities, and I think also like the developers literally said we're going to make
Dota.
Oh, yeah,
I know Dota has 4 abilities, but you have like 3.
Similar, yeah. But yeah, my point is it's still similar at its fundamental level. You have 5 people, you're trying to defuse a bomb. Everyone takes a lane. All Valorant maps are basically got lanes. Maybe the lanes are slightly different. Maybe there's different entry and exit points, and you can actually move around the map a little bit better. But at the end of the day, it is effectively Counter-Strike with abilities. The problem when you try and innovate too much, and I see this with the trading card game Skyweaver, is if it goes too far away from what people are used to or what they're comfortable with, it doesn't actually attract people, because they're like, oh, this is too complicated, or this is too different to what I'm used to. That's why I actually don't think that people want to move too much away from something they play already existing. Something, and this might be a bit controversial, but I would argue that auto battlers are the really innovative way of moving away from traditional card games, because now, rather than playing your card inanimate on the board, the card is now animated on the board and automatically does its own things. You're using cards to place place items on those characters, and the characters are represented by the cards. But then you're just in a completely new genre, in my opinion. So I can see what you're saying. Like, we don't want a carbon copy.
But then again, right? Like with what you said there, like, okay, so actually just finish your point first.
Yeah. So like, obviously a carbon copy that does nothing different is, I mean, that's obvious. I don't think people are going to move from that. But at the end of the day, it's just small things that can actually push people in the other direction. If, for example, I was like, let's say League of Legends, right? There was like meta issues when Jax, like, I don't know if you remember Jax, like Jax was just stupidly broken. It was no fun in beta. He would just like run around, just kill everyone. He was just like retardedly dumb. And there was no balance. But then if someone was like, dude, there's this game called, League of whatever, and it's exactly the same thing, but the meta is balanced, I guarantee you, well, for me personally, I would move to that game because I'm just sick of getting killed by this Jax, because it's the same game, but I'm getting rid of the shitty sides of the game. And
yeah, but I think that's, you're mentioning a feature that like definitely got improved, and it will get improved. I don't think
Sure.
people are like, oh, fuck this game, I'm just gonna play this game with this fixed, and then it's not like you still need the player base. It's not like people switch over, like you can move tens of thousands of people across games like that. I don't think it's that easy, and I think a good example is like the one you mentioned, like League of Legends and Dota. Probably a lot of League of Legends players did not switch to Dota 2 when it popped off, because why? It's kind of the same thing. I think it's too similar to League of Legends, and they're like, oh, whatever, I'm just gonna stick to League of Legends. I know the mechanics here, I know like the whole, like, again, everything about the game. Dota 2, yeah, I mean, this looks cool, but it's basically the same thing, so I'm not gonna, like, there's some differences obviously, but yeah, not gonna switch over. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. And if you have like small differences, like small improvements, I don't think that's enough to make people convert to your product. And but I do like your point of, you don't want to go too far off, because, well, if you go too far off, then it's just not a similar product. It's not in the same class of products. So you don't want to like change everything too much that it's not even the same genre, or like it's too different, because you're not really comparing the same markets or products anymore. But I do believe, I still believe you need a big improvement, at least, like some big improvements to make people switch over. Still, I still think like small things are not enough.
Yeah, I think you're frozen. Oh no, you're good now.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Me? Oh,
No, it's
frozen.
me.
Yeah. So that's why bringing it back to Gods, I think they're not doing enough new stuff that's also like relevant. It's not like just doing new stuff. It's just like really bringing like dramatic improvement in the space. And from what you guys have said, they're not moving that fast either, which for like a new competitor, you have to move very fast with implementations and like new features, and you cannot you cannot go slow or like slower than your competition. You have to catch up to your competition. You cannot just like cruise. And I think I see this in a lot of crypto gaming projects that are just like very slow. They like had a ton of money from like hype, whatever. They gathered a lot of funds, and they just don't move fast. They just like take their time, and like they're not gonna compete. They're not gonna, until they have a working product. People are not gonna even play that type of game anymore until they can have like a quality product. So I think we're underestimating how hard it is to make a solid game, a solid product. I think we're not. I think if we had been exposed, like I have been exposed to some extent to the startup world. I think if we had been exposed to the startup world more, I think I think it would have helped us quite a bit in seeing, okay, these guys are very slow, they're not gonna make it. Because what we're seeing here, we are looking at startups, right? Like all these new gaming projects, they are startups, but they're not behaving like startups. Like they're behaving like, whatever. It's gonna take like 10 years to make this, and we promise it's gonna be fine. So I think that's also, it's just like many components to make a successful startup, and even more startups don't make it, even with the huge work ethic and resourcefulness and like all the networking, like they still don't make it, most of them. So I think a lot of projects don't understand this, and a lot of them not having prior experience in startup world, and like how it looks to like actually grow a business or a project. That's where they fail, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, we're seeing that with Illuvium. People are getting tilted now because they're taking too long, which, it doesn't matter how good.
I mean,
or
like
the potential.
Kieran is like is his first like big company, right? It's his first.
No, I think he's got a few franchises, but
He's had a few startups, but this is his
Yeah.
first one where he's going to face significant public pressure. That's for sure.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, this is
Yeah,
startup in tech and gaming. I think his other startups were in different industries. So, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, like, if you once again, I just think if you look at the gaming industry as a whole, and we're talking about AAA studios, like, you know, like the Sons of the Forest game is a good example. It's 2017. They put out their first game, and then it was very successful. And they're like, we got to make a second version, and they delayed like 6 months 3 times, I think it was. Delays in gaming, as much as I hate to say it, is normal. Like, you can't not have delays. I can't think of any game that was literally released on time. You know, Fortnite was in beta for like 4 years or something ridiculous, until it actually like got fully released. Yeah, I mean, I think gaming's just a little bit different. I don't think we can apply the same logic as other industries to gaming, just because that's the thing.
Okay, yeah, no, like maybe they do need longer timelines, but I think it's different. There's a difference between needing longer timelines and just taking longer to do what you're supposed to.
I mean, and that's something that's, I mean, it's hard to know without being behind the scenes. I mean, you know, Gods restructured their entire team last year. They had to fire so many people because I don't think they were doing that well financially, because obviously bear market. So that probably might explain why there was so many delays on certain things. But yeah, I mean, unless we actually behind the scenes, it's pretty hard to know. And yeah, I think I mean, basically from what we've seen in Web3 gaming, it seems like a lot. I mean, gaming in general, for what it's worth, it just takes a really long time, and there's always delays. And I'm not saying that that's something that we should expect, but that's something that we should compare to. We should always be comparing Web3 gaming projects to traditional gaming projects. I don't think we can be as critical. If the normal game industry already is fully delayed, then we have to use the same comparative measure. Otherwise, I think it's unfair. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest, resources in the AAA gaming studios, if you're not working with, you know, like Sony, even Epic Games. I mean, Epic Games took ages for Fortnite. So I don't know, maybe it's like there's only probably a few companies where they can meet that timelines. It's it's just the unfortunate nature of the gaming industry.
Okay.
All right, guys. I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think we've pretty comprehensively covered the topic. So yeah,
we stayed.
See, time will tell. Time will tell.
We stayed within the 90-minute mark.
Yeah, I think get rid of the tokenomics. That's my big thing. Focus on other things. Focus on the game, not the tokenomics. I don't like the tokenomics of Gods. But anyway, that's my big criticism.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. That was a good review. Thank you, RDZ. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see you play some Hearthstone, show off your mechanics. I know you had Hearthstone up ready to go, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to play a game. See you play in your silver ELO.
Fuck off.
All right. Good stream, guys. And I don't know if anyone's watching or was watching, but if you are watching, Daniel just released his video on Dead Drop by Dr. Disrespect. It's a very comprehensive project review. He seems to enjoy the game quite a bit, and he thinks there's a lot of potential in it. So if you are interested in that, go check
it's
out.
shorter than this video.
Yeah, we're going to be way shorter than this video. So if anyone's watching this on the broadcast and they've made it all the way to the end here, go check out that video. I think that's going to be quite a good watch. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go subscribe to the channel. We're doing Web3 gaming content. Every 2 weeks, we do these live stream meetings. This is basically what we've been doing for the last 1.5 years internally. And we've decided to make this public just because, fuck it. We may as well share the information with you guys. And that's all from us. And we'll see you guys in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.